What up, though, One Pride? This is the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, the podcast where One Pride goes worldwide. My name is Antony Fitzpatrick. I am joined by Ryan McCluskey, and we are joined by Hank as well. It is a Wednesday, which can only mean one thing. The College Football Podcast is back after a couple of month hiatus. The new season is upon us, so we are back to get you up to date with everything that is going on. Conference previews, we are going to be doing it all. Ryan, I don't know about you, but I am very glad to have had the break after the draft. So much went on going into that. I was so tired afterwards, but I tell you what, I'm feeling up for another season of college football now. I'm starting to get there.
Oh yeah, this season's going to be super interesting. After the draft we've just had, like the guys that are left, like the Heisman race, it's going to be one of the most hotly contested we've had for a long time because there are no front runners this year for me. Like there's a load of talented guys, but for me, there's no one that is the cream of the crop. So the playoffs this year, it's going to be incredibly hard to call. Because, like I said, the Bryce Youngs are gone, the CJ Strouds are gone, Anthony Richardsons are gone. Like, we're left with a lot of good guys, but it's anyone's race. Calling them, pulling them apart and comparing them, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun to try and nitpick between them. And, controversy galore, everything, like, say, with EA, NCAA, the college football game, that is now probably not going to happen again. They get our hopes up and they've just dashed them. I don't think this game's ever going to.
Just make fake rosters. That is just for the love of God. Just make fake rosters.
You're going to have to do it with fake players.
Yeah, just make fake rosters. I don't care. I just want the game. I want to see what it's like. I mean, after 2 years anyhow, you basically lose all your guys, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, the game, frustratingly, is taking its time. But yeah, as Ryan said, this is shaping up to be a very unpredictable college season. Last year, we saw so many upsets, so many shockers. You know, the basketball schools rose to prominence. Your Dukes, your Kansases, even the likes of New Mexico States. All these guys started getting better. So it's going to be interesting to see if these guys keep pushing up the ascendancy or whether some of those fallen giants are going to come back. But yeah, thank you for everyone who is joining us. Say, this is season 3 already, which is crazy. It seems a minute ago since we started doing this. Nearly 2 years we've been doing this show now. We appreciate all of you who have joined us in the first 2 years and anyone who may be joining us for the first time in year 3. Let me just get all the housekeeping out the way first, and then we will go through the day's offerings for you. So don't forget, Roar of the Lions UK Discord. If you want in, just let us know. We will fire you a link across. It is mainly chatter about us getting our asses whipped in the ashes by the Aussies at the minute. So if you want to come in and bring some NFL chat with you, that would be much appreciated to get us away from the pain of that. The Roar of the Lions UK main podcast. We didn't have a show this Monday. Unfortunately, Matt was away in Glastonbury and I was dealing with some personal issues that arose over the weekend, so we just did not have time to put a good show together, and we didn't want to put together a rubbish one for you, so I thought we'll take the week off, but we will be back on Monday. Me and Matt having a little meeting tomorrow. We are sorting out the schedule for every show up until the season comes, so there will be no more breaks there. Don't forget to like and sub everything, YouTube, Twitch. We appreciate all of you who follow us. Lions Nation Unite, Herman Moore's app, content creators, Detroit Lions fans, creating content by the fans, for the fans. We're on there. There's so many other great social media content creators for the Detroit Lions as well, so please do go and check that out. And don't forget, we are now monetized on YouTube. We have a tip jar, so if you do want to support us on the upkeep of the pod, we really appreciate that. But we're in this for the love of the game, not for the money. And we also have a feedback form, so if you have any notes about the show you want to give us, if anything you want to see us do, anything we could do better, all that sort of stuff, fill that in. We will take all constructive critique on board. Right, we have that out the way. So let's start with all the college football. So as you know, last season when we started season 2, we started doing our conference previews for the season, where we take an in-depth look at the conferences, the teams, just to try and give you a little idea about all the teams, the layouts, players to watch, etc. I started off the series very late last year, so we only managed the group of 5 in the independents, hoping to do them all this season. So we are starting from the very scratch, and we're going to be starting off, as we did last year, with Conference USA. So we are going to be doing that this evening, and then in the coming weeks we're going to go through more, and then we've got other bits planned. We are going to do a prediction show for the season. So we're going to predict all the championship games. We're going to try and predict the playoffs, who gets the Heisman. Me and Ryan are really going to put our opinions on the line here to be absolutely scrutinised. So yeah, and thank you to everyone who's joining us. I see Ken Stouder is in the chat on YouTube. Got a few more in there and on Twitch as well. If you've got any questions or anything, as the show goes on, put them in there. And when we've done the CUSA stuff, happy to answer them. Any college football stuff, just wang it on in there. Right, without further ado, let us get into it. So, Conference USA preview for the 2023 season. The conference itself founded in 1995. Current champions, Ryan, UTSA. Last season we did this show. We correctly predicted that UTSA were going to defend their crown, which they did. But the king is dead. They are gone. The conference is wide open with an assortment of FCS upstarts, independent transfers in, and then of course the teams who remain from an exodus this year. I don't know about you, but it sometimes gets a little bit of tap out of the group of 5 conferences, but for me it's shaping up to be one of the most unpredictable and potentially quite intriguing conferences this year.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of like in an American TV show, like where you'd go into like the class of detention, and you got all the weirdos, the degenerates, the kids that eat crayons, and you don't know what you're going to get from any of them. And that's what kind of makes it interesting. It's a real mixed bag of the good, the bad, the ugly, and the unpredictable. And UTSA leaving is probably the best thing that could happen for them, because it means hopefully the cream will rise to the top and someone will emerge. Hopefully someone will emerge as a new front runner, but it could just be chaos. And it either way, if it's good or bad, it's going to be interesting. Like I say, UTSA with like I say, Zachary Franklin, guys like that, they made too much light work of this. They kind of strolled through it at a canter's pace, and they had to move on to bigger, better, greener pastures. But yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting what happens this year. As you mentioned, we've got new kids on the block. And we saw JMU last year. Like I said, they could have gone to a title game. They instantly made the jump up and had instant success, which is a really high bar they've set for teams that jump up from the FCS. So can others follow suit? It can be done. We've shown that now.
Exactly. This is about as unpredictable as it's going to get. Most of the conferences, you can at least have a little idea about the hierarchy here. But this year, it is very tough to call. So we are going to go through that this evening. We're going to break the teams down, some of the players, the schedules, and we'll see what goes on there. So just a background to the teams in there this year. So as Ryan said, there's been a lot of departures. So 6 teams have departed for the American Athletic Conference. Those are Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, University of Alabama in Birmingham, and the University of Texas San Antonio. Those 2, North Texas and UTSA, were the top 2 finishers. They were the ones who competed in the championship game last year. So it is wide open, and in their place we have 4 new arrivals. So we have the Liberty Flames and the New Mexico State Aggies. They were both independent schools previously, not aligned to a conference. They have both now come in to make up CUSA's declining numbers. And promoted from FCS, we have the Jacksonville State Gamecocks and the Sam Houston State Bearcats. So it makes a total of 9 teams in the conference this year. And then next year we've got one more future arrival for the conference. The Kennesaw State Owls will also be making the jump up from the FCS to the CUSA in 2024. So it'll be a 10-team conference again next season, providing nothing else happens, but who knows with the way realignments run at the minute. So the entire roster for the CUSA this year: say 9 teams. You've got the Florida International Panthers, known as FIU, the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, the Liberty Flames, the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, the New Mexico State Aggies, the Sam Houston Bearcats, the University of Texas El Paso Miners, also known as UTEP, and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, home of Broderick Martin, one of the draft picks for the Detroit Lions in the draft just gone. So the Lions do their homework on CUSA prospects, so maybe we can unearth one of the guys for 2024 who might be arriving on the Lions roster. Right, let's kick it off. 9 teams. We're going to start with the Florida International Panthers. So for those of you who were with us when we did this last year, we just give you a little bit of a breakdown on the team. This year I've changed it around a bit. We're going to talk a bit about the 2022 season, where they won, where they lost, how they ranked, and then we're going to take a look at their prospects ahead for 2023, as well as a player on each team to keep an eye out for. So the Panthers, their home stadium, Ricardo Silva Stadium, the 2021 record, which we covered last year, was 1-11. They was 0-8 in the CUSA. 2022 saw an improvement for them. They went 4-8 overall, and they were 2-6 in the CUSA. So small beginnings. This was a really big rebuild job here. The rivalry, of course, is with Florida Atlantic, known as the Shula Bowl. Florida Atlantic have won the last 6 in a row with that one. So Coach Mike McIntyre. One of the interesting things about this conference this year, no first-time head coaches. Every coach has been in his position for at least a year. So this is Mike McIntyre's second year at Florida International. He is a very well-tenured coach. Did a rebuild job with San Jose Spartans in 2010. He earned a shot with the Pac-12 with Colorado after that. Ryan will know him well. Colorado had 7 disastrous seasons with him, and then one amazing one where they won their first ever Pac-12 South title. Talk about an anomaly. He had a couple of assistant jobs after that before getting the Florida International job last year. Again, like we said, this is a huge rebuilding job. He took over a 1-11 team. They'd not won any games in the conference, but showed some promise. They were 4-4 last season, but then they ended up losing out. The wheels just fell off a bit. It became too much, including getting whooped in the Shula Bowl 52-7. But this was a team whose defense gave up less than 30 points just twice in 12 games. So in 12 games, they only gave up 30 points less than twice. So to get 4 wins out of that is a fairly respectable start for them. The results, they got wins against Bryant, at New Mexico State, at Charlotte and versus Louisiana Tech. The losses were at Texas State, at Western Kentucky, versus UConn, versus UTSA, at North Texas, versus Florida Atlantic, at UTEP, and versus Middle Tennessee. Right, we talked about Florida International last year. It was going to be a really big job there, and we didn't really expect a great deal to start with. But, I mean, you saw shoots last year. That's not the worst season they could have had. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement, but overall, I've got to say that's a pretty decent first year for Mike McIntyre.
Oh, yeah, when you come into a program that comes off, a 1-win year, expectations are so low. Like I say, you've got a huge roster turnover. You'll have plenty of players hitting the portal. You'll be building your team. And a lot of losses there were to teams that have now departed, and there were some of the best. Like I say, so you've got 3 of those losses, like I say, teams are not there anymore. And in their place, some very beatable teams. So this year, a bowl game, bowl eligibility kind of needs to be the target. A team that wins 3 games in its first year more than it did the year before, a bit like the Lions, kind of wants to see an upward trajectory. So this year, like I say, 6-7 wins is probably the aim, and having a second year to work, like I say, on that defense, keep those defensive players, just get a better overall scheme. Now players have bought into it. They'll have had less roster turnover because they saw an improved season. I'd like to think they're trending in the right direction. And that will, I'm not going to say they're sleepers for the conference, but I'd like to think that they should make another jump again this season. If something regresses, then I'd be worried this quickly in the rebuild.
Yeah, so a part of the new thing I've done for these teams this year, I've got some of their stats up for the main things for the 2022 season. So for Florida International, the total offense was, and this is out of 131 by the way, total offense was 117th, total defense was 120th, scoring offense 121st, scoring defense 127th, the rushing offense was 119th, the rushing defense was 111th, so couldn't run the ball, couldn't stop the run, gave up nearly 200 yards a game to the run and 31 touchdowns, about 4.5 yards per carry. Passing offense was 85th, so a lot better, 219 yards per game on average, but the passing defense was 109th. In sack terms, they were 99th. They had 21 sacks on the season. Sacks allowed, they were 34th, only allowed 18. Tackles for loss, they were 61st, average 6 per game, 71 overall, so not bad. Tackles for loss allowed, though, they were 77th. They allowed about 6 per game as well. And the turnover margin was 109th in the country. They gained 16 turnovers, lost 22 turnovers. So, again, right, they say 4 wins, and you are sort of really entrenched down there on both sides of the ball. A lot of improvement, but to still snag 4 wins out of that shows that, yeah, it was tough, but the opportunity is there, especially when they were able to make some stops on defense and not give up so many points.
I mean, to win 4 games with those stats is pretty remarkable. That's bad. Apart from tackles for loss and their like passing efficiency in a game, a lot of those are like bottom like 8% percentile. They weren't bad. They were below 100 in nearly every category. So there is tons to work on. It sounds like the run game is what needs biggest fixing. Stopping the run and also helping it move the chains, because if a passing offense is only 80th, it needs help from a run game. So I'd say that's their immediate problem. 1, stop turning the ball over, and 2, run game, they need to shut up the trenches a little bit, because they can get to the quarterback, but they're running through the middle and their offensive line is a bit leaky against the run. So I'd like to see immediate trying to fix the run game. That's the biggest prior need.
Yeah, absolutely, I would agree there. So, looking ahead to the 2023 season for them, quarterback Grayson James, that is probable right now. This is his 3rd season. He's 6'1", 200 pounds, so limited time his freshman year. Started year 2 as backup to Duke transfer Gunnar Holmberg. However, Holmberg suffered a season-ending concussion in Game 1. James took the reins for the rest of the season, so he was basically a freshman starting last year in relief in Game 1 and thrown into the entire season. It was not too bad. He threw for 1,969 yards, 11 touchdowns, but 11 picks as well. He had 223 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He's expected to have camp competition, but as of now, from everything I've seen, he is projected to be the starter. The season preview, last year we did strengths and weaknesses. I've changed it around a bit, so just doing an overall preview of things here. So things don't look good on the surface for them. They've been ranked 129th on ESPN's College Football Power Index. That's out of 133, and they've suffered a lot of problems in the offseason. The spring game got cut short due to thunderstorms down there in Florida, so they weren't able to do a full spring workout. On offense, they've already lost starting running back Lexington Joseph to a season-ending injury. They've lost third-string quarterback Amari Jones to a season-ending Achilles injury. Their running back 2, Eric Wilson, transferred to Temple. They've lost 2 starting offensive linemen to the transfer portal, as well as wide receiver Tyrese Chambers. Now, for those of you with very good memories, Tyrese Chambers was our man to watch on that team last year. He was their standout wide receiver who got like over 1,000 yards as a freshman the year before. He's gone to Maryland in the portal, and they've also lost Rivaldo Fairweather, their second best receiver. Oh, sorry, he's the tight end. So they've lost 40% of last year's receiving output. And last year's defensive rankings speak for themselves. They were objectively terrible in nearly every metric, and that takes time to fix. And they've also lost standout linebacker Gatham Bernadelle, one of the few bright spots on that fence. He's gone to Stanford in the Power 5 conference to pack 12. However, this was kind of pretty much the same situation McIntyre found himself in year one. He still managed to make something out of it. Obviously, the advantage now is that he's going to have his players playing in the same system for the second year under the same coaches. That sort of continuity helps the growth of a college team. And they've not just lost to the portal, he's managed to get some good backups in there. So he's brought in Shamari Lawrence from South Dakota. Ryan might be familiar with him, to lead their running back room. Big chance for him to impress at a higher level. And they landed a very high commitment from the linebacker Avery Huff, who comes from Miami. He was a big former 4-star recruit. It's not quite worked there for him, but he's going to move down now, and he's probably usually the cut above quality wise that you get there. So you've got a leader for your defense as well, and you've got some bits. So on the outside, right, it sounds tough, but you have a rookie quarterback. Well, he's going to be in his second year now. He's had a trial by fire next year. He's in it last year. He's in the system. You have lost a lot of guys, but you bring in ones in, and you do keep a bit of stability there. It's like you said, the possibility is there for them to up their win total again this year.
Yeah, I'd expect the quarterback to be having like 2,500 yards and doubling the touchdowns. Just being in a second year, knowing the offense, knowing the offensive coordinator, he's got all the mistakes out of him, hopefully in his rookie year, where he can't have been confident last year. So he must be much more confident going into this year. And yeah, they've lost Chambers, one of the best playmakers in the FBS. I'd say he's gone. But someone will have to step up. It's an opportunity for someone now to become a household name and potentially get that big move that Tyrese got himself to jump in the portal next year. Because, like I said, the two guys going to Maryland and Stanford, two massive schools, that shows that the potential, if you have a breakout year, you can jump up to a Power 5 school pretty quickly. And then to bring in some good recruits as well, just who they've got there already that stayed around, and like who they've brought in, I would expect them, if they went out there and won 4 games again this year, I'd be very disappointed. It'd show that they've not learned anything from last year, or that the quarterback has regressed, or that the big names that they've brought in have not made an impact. So I'd be disappointed. So no, the bar should be making a bowl game, or if they don't get a bowl game, at least get enough games to be eligible. So 6 wins for me is what they should be aiming for. And that would be a good year for them.
I see Grandizer is in the building there. Hope you are doing well, Grand. Yeah, I agree. I think the possibility is there. So we look at the schedule. There's 6 home games, 6 away games. So they split. They start at Louisiana Tech. Then they've got a home stand to Maine and North Texas. Then they're on the road at UConn. Got a bye. Then you're at home to Liberty, away to New Mexico State, away to Sam Houston. You're at home to Jacksonville State. You're away at Middle Tennessee, and then you finish rough. You're away at Arkansas. You're at home to Western Kentucky. But I mean, the away slate, UConn are no pushovers now under Jim Mora, but Louisiana Tech won there last year. You've got New Mexico State just coming in, and they're hit and miss. You've got Sam Houston just coming up. You've got Middle Tennessee, who are middle of the pack. You know, if you win a few home games, there is an opportunity on that away schedule to sort of top your load up a bit.
Yeah, they need to be beating the newcomers. There's no excuse for them not beating the 2 FCS teams. That would be inexcusable. And then, like I say, there's a lot of middle roaders. Like I say, Middle Tennessee, lost a few players. LA Tech, you don't really get from them. So there's chances there. Like Liberty, like I don't know what they're going to get from them. So the newcomers, like I say, the 4 new teams, you'd like to think that they could beat all of them. So their home form is really going to be important, because you can pretty much put up you can chalk up Western Kentucky and Arkansas for one as losses, probably. And then there'll be some others there that you just think, yeah, they're just not going to get anything there. So they need to start quickly. Like I said, they do not want to be going into Arkansas and Western Kentucky needing 1 win, because that's not a scenario you want to be in.
Oh no, absolutely not. Right, finishing off, so players to watch. There are some very interesting intriguing players on this team this year. You may have heard of a few of them, Ryan. They're bringing them up from the FCS. So the guy I've picked out is the linebacker Elijah Anderson Taylor. He is 6 foot, 235 pounds. He is the tackling machine that has been snapped up in the transfer portal from Northern Colorado down in the FCS. So in his one starting year there, he had over 100 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 5 forced fumbles. He is a ball hawk with a nose for the ball, both on the ground and in the air. And he was actually courted by McIntyre back in his Colorado days, because McIntyre was on staff back then, so the two know each other very well. He's had a breakout year. McIntyre has got a guy for the centre of his defence, and like I say, you're going to be pairing him with Avery Huff, a high-level commit who's sort of coming the other way, trying to find his home as well. So you've got a guy who's been there, done it a little bit, and you've got the upstart coming from the FCS. You could potentially have a very good linebacking core in there. And they've also brought up a transfer D tackle from Bryant. That's Jack Daly. He's 6'3", 315 pounds. He was an all-star for Bryant last year. A big addition to that defensive line. They've... I mean, this might be the right way to build for a team like Florida International, isn't it? Right, get great talent from the FCS, because as we've seen, especially last year, there's not much difference between some of these FCS teams and some of these lower ones in the FBS.
No, the gap is pretty much invisible these days, and they're addressing their need as well. Front seven is where they lived and died last year. The middle of the defensive line and the linebackers was so porous. That is what they've gone and addressed. So they've brought in 2 linebackers, hopefully that can build a gel together. And then at 315 pounds and 6'3", that means hopefully he's good against the run, because he's short and stout in the middle. So it's going to be hopefully strengthen their interior. So this team can vastly improve against the run on defense. That is the start to them winning more games.
Yeah, so a year of transition again for Florida International, but hopefully might be their year to get a bowl game. Right, let us move it on, and we come to the first of our FCS newcomers, Ryan. I know you watch a lot of FCS football, so you'll know maybe a little more about these guys. So we've got the Jacksonville State Gamecocks up first. Established 1904, they play their games at Burgess Snow Field. Their 2022 record, was 9-2. They were 5-0 in the ASUN, which is the Atlantic Sun Conference, if I remember my conferences rightly. But that was obviously down in the FCS. The big rivalries with Troy and with Samford, so maybe they're up in the FBS now, they get to renew that one with Troy. The coach, now if you're a Michigan fan and you're listening to this, you're going to know who this guy is, maybe not all too fondly. Of course, we're talking about Rich Rodriguez. This is his second season with Jacksonville State. He may well be known to you, the Michigan faithful. He's had a very interesting career, let's say. So in between getting sued by West Virginia for breach of contract, getting Michigan hammered by NCAA sanctions, leading them to having to self-sanction themselves, and getting fired by Arizona amidst an inquiry into sexual harassment, between all that, he has had success in college football with West Virginia and Arizona. He runs his version of a no-huddle run version of the spread offense, and it is very successful when you get it right. He has been a very successful coordinator on multiple other teams as well, but Michigan fans will remember him. He has the worst winning record in team history. He got swept for 3 years by both Ohio State and Michigan State. He ended the longest active bowl streak on record at the time. He decreased recruiting standards and set a culture that saw many players just leave, and led to Michigan getting the ire of the NCAA and having to fine themselves greatly for some of the transgressions there. In Jacksonville State, he took over a team that has won 9 or more games every year since 2014. So last year was kind of just a continuation of previous years. He took over a successful program. He kept it being successful. Moving up to the FBS will be the true success of whether he can be a success to this team or not. But Rich Rodriguez, Ryan, interesting character and a big season for him.
Yeah, I know him well. Like you say, the Arizona Wildcats head coach, offensive coordinator, really good. He has been in charge of some really good offenses, good offensive mind. But being head coach in most places, yeah, it's not panned out well for him. He often finds himself in hot water, says the wrong thing, does the wrong thing. He's kind of Marmite. big pickup for Jacksonville State and the Gamecocks to learn down, but I feel like he cheesed off too many guys at the FBS level, so I think he can have a fourth down there.
Yeah.
And he ain't fit, like I say, it's not like he's reinvented the wheel either. He's taken a team that was consistently successful and just trying to maintain it. I think he's just trying to probably fix his reputation a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of what Hugh Freeze has been doing down at Liberty, like reputation fixing, and then hopefully getting a bigger job in the future.
I was very surprised they made the jump up because, if I'm honest, I know they have not had much playoff success. I know they've won a lot of games, but really in the postseason, I've not seen them make much waves in a lot of seasons. So they're foregoing that to jump straight to the major leagues.
Yeah. Quick shout out to Tony White. Just says hello everyone. He says he got screwed over at Michigan. I mean, this is too far back for me to know about, so I wouldn't be able to see too much there. But yeah, he's got a very storied history with Michigan, and fans will probably still know him quite well there. Right. I'm not going to do the wins and losses from last year. It's down in the FCS, but just to take their rankings. So bear in mind, this is down in the FCS, so you kind of have to take them with a grain of salt. Total offense was 27th. Total defense was 66th. The scoring offense was 10th. The scoring defense was 33rd, so scored better than they played in a lot of situations. The rushing offense, 5th in the country at the FCS level, not surprising given the style of football he plays. Rushing defense was 81st. Passing offense was 96th, obviously a lot worse than the rushing. Passing defense was 52nd. 29th in sacks with 27. Sacks allowed, they were 24th, only allowed 16 on the year. Tackles for loss, they were 33rd, average 6.6 per game. And then tackles for loss allowed, they were 65th, they allowed 6 per game as well. Turnover margin, they were 37th, gained 23, lost 20. But I mean, you can't listen to a lot of that, Ryan. They're mid rankings, and this is the FCS, and like I said, they're moving up now. You would expect a team sort of like to be top 10 in quite a lot of categories there, and obviously the rushing attack is what he's known for, and it's one of the best going at the FCS level. But not numbers that blow your mind just before they make the jump up.
No, they're top 30, top 40, 45 in a lot of categories. They're pretty consistent across the board on both sides of the ball. They were in a average conference, which helped them propel themselves to 9-10 wins every season, playing a lot of the same folk. I respect the fact that they want to challenge themselves. I think it got stale going like say 9-2, 9-3 every year. It must get boring. Like I say, they weren't winning in the playoffs, or they weren't getting close to a national title. From top of my head, they didn't get close to a national title for a number of times, so they thought, well, screw it, we'll just jump up.
Yeah.
They've joined the right conference because the conference is in flux, and if I'm totally honest, across the board, I think the standard is quite poor with who's left and who's remaining. I think they'll do okay. Like I said, it's not going to be a huge shock to the system when they're playing their conference schedule. It's going to be interesting to see who they schedule, or how they play out of conference, who they pick. That'll be the real test, because playing other CUSA teams, they could probably hold their own or tread water at least. So a successful team at the lower level jumping up, it's always interesting to see how they adjust.
Yeah, well, it's interesting non-con for them actually this year. We'll talk about the schedule in a moment. So we'll move on to this sort of season's preview. So the quarterback, they've got Zion Webb back. Their quarterback, he was not meant to play this year, but he went and argued with the committee. He's got an extra, I think it was to do with the COVID year and being able to redshirt and that. So Zion Webb is going to be the quarterback. He is back for a 7th year. He has been at Jacksonville State since 2017. Last season he completed 55% of his passes for 1,737 yards, 10 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He had 412 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns on 60 attempts on the ground as well. But he will get competition from their backup Tayshawn Smoot. He is a dual threat quarterback. He's seen the field for very limited reps, but has apparently had a really good spring camp and was slated to be the starter before Webb got his extra availability. So maybe a little bit of a battle there, but Zion Webb is meant to get the nod for now. The season preview, this is another team not in favour on the ESPN Power Index. They're coming at 131st out of 133 in the FBS rankings. But, like Ryan said with James Madison, it's hard to project how teams making the leap up will do. James Madison could have won the Sun Belt last year in their first year if they had been allowed to. But because of the rules, they weren't allowed to participate in the championship game. But just how well Jacksonville State do, that's going to come in large part down to its offense, which is the X factor on this team. Like I said, Rich Rodriguez's spread offense, which is very hard to defend against. I did put my notes here talking about Smoot being the quarterback. So now Webb been in. They've got an experienced guy there who knows how to run the offense that Rodriguez wants. He's going to have to get better himself in the passing game. But in terms of a guy who can, run this system, he's about as experienced as you will get. They're returning 4 of the starting offensive line that powered the 5th best rushing offense in the FCS last season. The running back room is loaded. You've got guys like Anwar Lewis and Ron Wiggins in there. They both were running at over 7 yards per carry last year. And they've brought in a transfer from Louisiana Monroe, Malik Jackson, who's also highly rated, who they've managed to snag. So he has got a plethora of running backs to lean his attack on. If the pass game can at least be average, this could be like a top 70, top 80 offense, which for a CUSA team, that can win you some games. The defense is the mystery. So you've got the defensive line, which is really good. You've got 2 standout guys in Chris Hardy and Jalen Swain. But beyond that, there's a lot of change on this team this year. In the linebacking and secondary units, they've lost 6 of the 10 players who registered over 30 tackles last season. On just all 3 units of the defense there. So you've got 6 of your main tackle guys gone. You've got 2 of your 2 most experienced guys are gone. Rodriguez has been recruiting a lot, but it's mainly from JUCO. So a lot of these guys I don't know really about at the minute. They're unproven commodities at this level, but it's an interesting one, right? This is a coach who is very experienced. His offense is really good when he gets it going. He's got the parts he needs to make it work. It's just, can the rest of the team prop it up for them this year?
Yeah, that's where I worry. Like, losing a lot or rebuilding a secondary is not good, because an offense that's built for a run game is not built to score quickly or come from behind. Like I said, their quarterback, to be honest, it's not the kind of quarterback you want to bring back the first time. Like I say, he's a game manager. The stats aren't very good. He just kind of has to hand the ball off and not turn it over. But they won't be built to come from behind or get in shootouts rebuilding a secondary if they're kind of like a 3-headed rushing monster. So they're going to have to hope that defensive line can generate pressure, so that back end that will take time to gel doesn't just get picked on. Because if they fall behind quickly, they will get blown out, because their quarterback is just not someone built to just cannon his way out of trouble.
No, if you can get in front and lean on that run game, you can dominate games from that point on. But it's whether you can do that or not. The schedule does set up in their favour. They've got 7 home games, just 5 away. So they start with a double homestand against UTEP and East Tennessee State from the FCS. So possible few wins there. Then you're at Coastal Carolina, who are minus their head coach this year, so who knows what's going on with them. You're at home to Eastern Michigan, then you're away at Sam Houston State, then you've got a 3-game homestand against Middle Tennessee, Liberty, Western Kentucky, then you're away at Florida International and SEC team South Carolina, and you finish off at home to Louisiana Tech and away at New Mexico State. I mean, if they want to make an early statement, right, UTEP and East Tennessee at home, fine. Eastern Michigan, we are a big fan of Creighton on the pod here, but it could be vulnerable. And then you're at Sam Houston, who are coming up with you. There's 2 or 3 wins in there. And then, you've got a 3-game homestand to maybe pull off some shocks in. So there is a route there for them if they figure it out quickly.
Yeah, they've got to figure it out quickly, because the second half of that slate is rough. Like, the middle half is tough. Those first 4 games will define entire season. If they get 3 wins, like they'll be riding out of confidence. But if they go 1-3, it's going to be a long slog from there. So yeah, they need to start quickly, because once they get into that Western Kentucky, South Carolina, Middle Tennessee part towards the end, that is tough. and especially let's say if they pick up any injuries, they could be limping to the end of the year. So yeah, they need to strike early and strike hot against especially some of their teams they've come up with, because they should know them really well. They should know East Tennessee State and Sam Houston. They should know those teams really well and have a plan already to beat them. They should not be losing to anyone from the FCS, in my opinion.
No, you want to win those games. You see them on the schedule, they're the ones you've got to go for to give yourself a basis for the season. So possibility for them. As for the players to watch on this team, the running back Anwar Lewis, in the CUSA they have produced many great running backs over the last few years. You just think of Sincere McCormack 2 years ago, you think of Dwayne McBride last year. This could be one of the guys who takes their mantle this year. So he is 5'8", 180 pounds. He might be small, but my God, is he mighty. He had 818 yards on the ground and 8 touchdowns last season. Averaged 7.7 yards per carry, so nearly 8 yards per click when he's running the ball. He is shifty as they come. He uses that smaller frame of his to evade tackles and fight through contact, where guys just struggle really to get their hands on him, and then he's got the speed to separate and he is gone. So Anwar Lewis, the running back, really the guy there. But also look out for defensive end Chris Hardy. He's coming off a 15.5 tackle for loss and a 5.5 sack season, and if they want to do well this year, that D-line has got to show up for them. So that is Jacksonville State. Let us move it on now. Team 3, we have the Liberty Flames, another newcomer to the conference. Oh, just one last thing about Jacksonville State before we move on. The two teams that have come up from the FCS this year, them and Sam Houston, they can't compete for the title or the championship game. So even if they do well, they can't win honours this year. It's like James Madison. I believe that rule is ending, but it doesn't count this year. So yeah, Team 3, Liberty Flames. Very interesting team last year. 1973 they were established, play the home games at Williams Stadium. Record last year, 8-5, but that doesn't even begin to tell the story, Ryan. Rivalries with Coastal Carolina, which is really, really awkward because their coach this year happens to be none other than Jamie Chadwell, said head coach formerly of Coastal Cal. When you're in need of a new head coach, which they were because Hugh Freeze left to go to Auburn, why not poach your rival's successful head coach? And that's exactly what Liberty did in going for Chadwell. Some might argue he abandoned ship at Coastal with the amount of talent he was about to lose, but it can't be argued that he's taken them from FBS newbies to highly established FBS talent. He went 39-22 in his time at Coastal, and with Grayson McCall as his general, he created one of the most fearsome offenses in all of college football and frequently had his team ranked in the AP top 25. Like I said, he replaces Hugh Freeze, who's had similar success with Liberty. He's made them a very good offense, especially in the Malik Willis days. Took a small school, installed into it a fearsome offense, led by a highly talented college quarterback, leading them to hanging around with teams far bigger than him. But both teams also had another common factor last year. They both suffered really bad, disappointing ends to the season. Coastal, they got smacked by James Madison 47-7 in the final regular season game in the Sun Belt before getting smashed even worse by Troy, who dropped a 50 burger on them. Troy, who beat them in the championship game, and then they had a 50 burger dropped on them when they played in the bowl game. As for Liberty, cruising along last year, had consecutive wins against BYU and away at Arkansas. That was a huge one. They were ranked about 15th in the country after that. They were ranked, they were 8-1, and then they imploded as well. They lost to UConn, they lost to Virginia Tech, they had 50 dropped on them by New Mexico State, and then they lost their bowl game to Toledo. So a hugely disappointing end to the season for them. Chadwell has brought his offensive coordinator Willie Korn with him, so expect absolutely nothing to change in terms of how they run that offense. Just to quickly go through the wins and losses, I'll bring Ryan in then. So the wins last year, they won at Southern Miss, versus Alabama Birmingham, versus Akron, at Old Dominion, at UMass, versus Gardner-Webb, versus BYU, and at Arkansas. They lost to Wake Forest, they lost to UConn, they lost to Virginia Tech, versus New Mexico State, and Toledo. Liberty, Ryan, that was one of the weirdest seasons really going. You beat BYU, you win on the road to Arkansas, who are a damn good team, and against a team of Liberty stature, they smoked them. They absolutely smoked them. And then you lose to 3 or 4 of the worst teams in college football. It was quite something.
Yeah, it was a collapse of the highest order. And I think that spelled the end of Hugh Freeze. Even if an SEC had not come in for him, I feel like that probably was time to go. And, like, say, Jamie moving over, such a weird sideways move. I don't understand it. I didn't understand it at the time. I don't understand why he's gone a little bit. I'm pretty sure they've got great facilities and a lot of money. But the program he was leaving so successful, obviously was about to lose a lot of talent. He's joining a program that's lost a lot of talent. And they're no better than Coastal. They're no better off than Coastal are now. And I worry for them this year. How they ended last year. I don't know. I feel like this year could be some proper growing pains for him.
Absolutely. Quick shout out to Lions 1960. He says, late to the party again. Hope you're doing well. We just appreciate that you're here. It doesn't matter when you come. We just like having you in the building. Let me just go through the stats for them for last year then. So the 2022 rankings, their total offense was 66th. Their defense was 36th. And this is going to be the shocking thing here. We usually associate them with their offense. It switched last year. The scoring offense was 71st. The scoring defense was 53rd. The rushing offense, 51st in the country, not bad, 172 yards per game. They got 24 touchdowns, 4.5 yards per carry. Rushing defense was 60th. Gave up 146 yards per game, 20 touchdowns. So they did a little better with the run, and defended against the run. They did all right. The passing offense was 88th. They went for 216 yards per game and had 21 touchdowns. Passing defense was 25th in the entire FBS. They only gave up 199 yards per game passing and 16 touchdowns. But this is where it gets interesting. Team sacks. They were 3rd in the nation with 45 sacks on the season. Unfortunately, sacks allowed, they were 112th. They gave up 41. And the most impressive stat of them all, team tackles for loss. They were 1st in the entire nation for tackles for loss. They had 121 tackles for loss last season, 10 more than second place, which was Clemson. But tackles for loss allowed, they ranked 117th. They gave up 98. So the defense did its job. The offensive line, not so much. The turnover margin was 85th. Now, that may sound bad. They gained 24 turnovers. They lost 27. The 24 gained would have put them top 15 nationally. The 27 lost puts them top 5 nationally. So that's kind of, the defense has no blame attached to it here. They were top 3 in sacks and tackles for loss, top 15 in turnovers. And I mean, this is just incredible, really, Ryan. I mean, and I look back to that Arkansas game. One of the best offensive lines usually in college football. It's never like stand out in elite, but it's always high quality. And their defensive line just wrecked them and killed KJ Jefferson. And we're used to Liberty being a team that just slings the ball around. It's gung-ho. It doesn't really run the ball. It just throws it all the time. And has a rotten defense. They just outscore for it. But last year, you saw a massive evolution of this team in terms of its defense.
Yeah, they had to change with the loss of Malik. They had to evolve. Like I said, they had to generate more pressure off the defense because they were losing key pieces. They were getting to the quarterback. They were blitzing. They were dialing up packages, getting through the holes, being really creative on the defensive line. Linebackers were mopping up. They were forcing turnovers. They were getting through holes, shedding blocks. As a unit, they were really collective. Their O-line, like I said, absolutely stunk. Like I said, for everything good the defensive line did, the Liberty O-line was dreadful. And there's a reason the quarterback was constantly running for his life and was so good dual threat, because the product of the pocket was dreadful. QB protection just has not been a thing there for a while. But yeah, a proper Jekyll and Hyde team. Like I said, their offensive output at times struggled, but their defense really turned it up and kept them in games at times. And then when it needs most on the biggest stages, like the defense really did come to play and shone out. So they're a team that really steps it up on the brightest and biggest stages. But then when they come to the minnows, like they shrunk like shrinking violets, and that's really worrying. That's not healthy because they're in a division full of shrinking violets, and like so they need to fix that. They can't only show up against the bigger and better teams.
Yeah, I mean, UConn you can kind of forgive because Mora did a hell of a job there last year, but then you get 50 dropped on you by 50 dropped on you by New Mexico State, and then Virginia. It's like that's inexcusable. It felt like they gave up on the year. So, and it's going to be very tough. I mean, a lot of the CUSA stuff I've looked at predict Liberty to win the conference this year, but as I'm going to talk to you about now, this is a team in transition. So the quarterback, undecided as of yet. So last year we talked about Charlie Brewer, the well-established veteran who was meant to go there and take over the mantle, but he didn't see the field, and I've no idea where he's at now. Instead, they kind of ran a quarterback rotation, so they had fourth-year quarterback Jonathan Bennett and the true dual threat redshirt freshman Kaiden Salter, who saw the field in their stead. So Bennett went for 1,500 yards with 12 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Salter went for 1,088 yards with 8 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And then you interject the portal signing of Southern Miss transfer Trey Lowe, and you've got a three-way scrap for the job, which is of yet to be decided, but it is likely to be one of Bennett or Salter. But the quarterback situation is not solved. In terms of the season preview, this is the very definition of a transition season. So Hugh Freeze is gone, and while Chadwell is great, Freeze has been that franchise for a while now. So you've got to get the new offense implemented. You've got new offensive coordinator, new head coach, but the transition on the field is where you're going to see it the most. So get this: Liberty are returning just 8 starters from last year's team. That's the whole team. They are returning just 8 guys, 5 on offense and 3 on that vaunted defense. So yeah, that star defense that pretty much led the entire nation in takeaways last year has lost most of its star players. The offense is still looking for its leader at quarterback. D.D. Hunter, who was the leading running back, is in the transfer portal, or he was when I wrote this. I think he's transferred now. So you've got Wake Forest transfer Quinton Cooley, and you've got freshman Vaughn Blue, who are the next men up in the running back room. Chadwell has hit the portal hard. He's brought in 17 new players there, but again, you've got to ingratiate these players into your scheme, and it's going to take time. But the big bonus for Liberty, they have a schedule that is really easy. Me and Ryan could probably coach this team to at least half a dozen wins. It's ranked 118th out of 133 on the strength of schedule ranking. So the lower are you down there, the easier your schedule is. So there's only 15 teams in the country with an easier schedule. So if this is a team that can settle quickly, they could run the table and go unbeaten. Or if it doesn't, they could maybe win as little as 3 or 4 games. You're bringing 8 guys back, new head coach, new offensive coordinator. You just don't know what a team's going to go through with this much transition.
No. If I had to guess right now, I think it's going to be a rough season for Liberty. What's weird to me is that Grayson McCall was in the portal for so long, and was there ever a conversation about him going to Liberty? I know I saw somewhere about schools didn't take what he was learning. I don't know if it was that true or not. Like you say, not being able to carry over his credits to the school he wanted to go to that he couldn't go to. But if you could have gone a little bit, Jamie obviously didn't push hard enough to convince him, because obviously he did decide to just stay put, which ultimately will have been a mistake. But the QB room for me is alarming. Like I say, no real leader, and I hate teams that, on second and third down, rotate a new quarterback in, constantly swapping them out for what they see on the field. No rhythm. It very much halts progress more often than not. It does lead to splash plays, but it's not how winning teams operate more often than not. So someone has to emerge, and they have to be the guy, and it can't be splitting time 50-50. That's not good and it's not healthy.
No, not at all. I agree there. I'm not. So some people think they're going to run away with it. I'm not sure until I see the team on the field and how they're playing. You can't say anything for certain with them this year. They will have a lot of talent, but in the CUSA there are a lot of really gritty teams that are hard to break down and beat if you ain't on the same page. The schedule, as I mentioned, though, sets up well for them. So they've got 7 home games, 5 away games. They don't play week 0. They've got a home opening stand against Bowling Green and New Mexico State. Then they're on the road to Buffalo from the MAC and Florida International. And then they're at home to Sam Houston. So very winnable 5 first games. Then they've got another bye. Then they're on the road to Jacksonville State. They're at home to Middle Tennessee. Then they're away at Western Kentucky. Then they've got a 3-game homestand against Louisiana Tech, Old Dominion, and UMass, of all teams. And then they finish off away at UTEP. I mean, the first 5, pretty winnable. I mean, that is very winnable there. Then you've got Tech, Dominion, and UMass at home at the end. It's just that little bit in the middle. When you got Middle Tennessee at home, you got Western Kentucky away. I mean, if they start well, they could run that. They could run that schedule, couldn't they?
Yeah, it's poor. On paper, that I'm going to say that is a bad schedule. Like I said, Bowling Green last year were pretty good. They caused a few upsets, but one of the best players in Defensive Nation has left them, and the core of the defensive line is gone. So that will be an interesting one. Like I say, Old Dominion, who did cause a few upsets last year, got a good quarterback. That's going to be an interesting game to watch. But like I say, UMass, oh god, I expect Liberty to make hard work of the schedule, and if they do, I worry for the near future. This you couldn't ask for a better schedule in terms of a transition and a future and a new head coach. But yeah, on paper, they should be winning a lot of games.
Yeah,
but only if they find some sort of balance and fix an entire defense. Yeah, a lot of things have got to go right. Otherwise, it could be an embarrassing year. If things don't go well, this could go down as quite an embarrassing year.
Oh yeah, I think the floor is like 4 games maybe for them, but then the ceiling could be 11. They could run them all. So there's such a vast thing for them this year. Finishing off, just a player to watch. I've got the defensive tackle Kendi Charles. He's 6 foot, 280 pounds. He is the single remaining figurehead from that defensive line that absolutely obliterated its opponents last year. He himself had a 2-sack performance against the Arkansas O-line, which is amongst one of the best in the country, and he's going to look to follow up a huge breakout season now with a similar level of production, because this time he's going to be doing it from a position of leadership. So it's all very well racking up the stats when you're in a line where everybody's feasting, but when the focus is on you, can you do it again? I believe that he can. I think there's potentially a very special player waiting in the wings with him. He's disruptive in the passing game. He's stout in his defense against the run. And on his day, there are a few O-linemen in that conference who will be able to handle him for a full game. So watch out for his name next year. That is Kendi Charles, the defensive tackle for Liberty. Right, let's move it on into the middle echelons of this preview. So next, we've got the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, established 1901. They play at the Joe Aylett Stadium. So I do the record of 2021 and 2022 because obviously we did them last year, so it's good to see a comparison of how they're doing. 2021 they went 3-9. They were 2-6 in the CUSA. 2022 saw the arrival of head coach Sonny Cumbie. It was his first year, and their record, they went 3-9 and they were 2-6 in the CUSA. So Sonny Cumbie's first year is exactly the same as how the year before he arrived finished. Their rivalries are with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Obviously, that is returning to active duty in 2026 because it's been dormant a while. And then they've got the rivalry in Dixie with Southern Miss as well, but Southern Miss generally hammer them in that. The coach, as I mentioned, Sonny Cumbie, is a second-year head coach here. He's built up a college resume as a coordinator at Texas Tech and TCU. He's coached wide receivers, outside receivers. He's been a co-offensive coordinator, full offensive coordinator, and even been a quarterbacks coach. Finished off 2021 as interim head coach at Texas Tech and actually won them a bowl game. Cumby is another, like Rich Rodriguez. He is known for creating high-octane offenses, but he came into a team that was coming off a very bad season, and Louisiana Tech lost a lot of talent last summer before he came in. This was never going to be easy for him. He made a decent start, actually. They were 2-3 after 5 weeks, and the losses, 3 of them were road losses to Clemson, Missouri, and South Alabama. So you got ACC, SEC, and South Alabama, pretty good team in their own right. That's nothing to be ashamed of, but it was a really rough schedule with 7 away games overall, and they ended up losing 6 of the last 7. The season just did not get going. However, sprouts for the future. There's no SEC or ACC on the schedule this year. It is still a tough draw, but he's going to need to start showing improvement. But it is there. The team did score 34 points plus 5 times last season because Sonny Cumby runs air raid, and you were able to see that air raid start to take shape. So this was like McIntyre at Florida International. This was another guy who came into a team that was floundering, for want of a better word. Had a good start, managed to get little good bits in there, ultimately fizzled out, I think, when the talent just wasn't able to sustain, and it was a horrible schedule for them. But again, you have to say, maybe job done first year. You can see the implementation of what he wants to do, and hopefully they can take a step in the right direction this year.
Yeah, he gets the benefit of the doubt year one. Like I say, he didn't improve any of records, but as you mentioned, scoring points has never been an issue for any of his teams, because he's got the chance to work with some fantastic quarterbacks at TCU and TTU. He's worked some really good offensive players. A lot of guys that are in the NFL, like, scoring points has never been an issue for him. But keeping them out, that's always been a different thing. And that's where he wins and he will lose games this year. Can he score points? Yes, he can. Like I said, their offense has been built to score heavily and score quickly. But leaving time on the clock, a leaky defense, that's what he needs to fix this year. Yeah. This year's big. This year has to have improvement. Like I said, if he starts the first half of the season poorly, his seat will get warm. They will wonder, was this a mistake? Was this not a good hire? So you cannot afford to get complacent after an underwhelming first year. He kind of needs to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Like I said, and this is a school that's produced some good players in the last few years.
Yeah.
They sent Trent Taylor, their 49ers receiver, to the NFL. They've had some top guys in the last few years. They've had some standouts. And they expect to produce those kind of players. Every few years, they want to be sending a few guys to the big leagues and go pro.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed. Again, the schedule didn't help him. So the wins last year came 3 home wins, so the home form was decent at least. They beat Stephen F. Austin, UTEP, and Middle Tennessee. The losses, again, I say, away at Missouri, away at Clemson, away at South Alabama, away at North Texas, away at Florida International, away at UTSA, away at Charlotte, and they lost a couple of home games to Rice and UAB. So, I mean, it was a rotten schedule for year one to start with. But as you were mentioning about the offense and the defense, it really comes to in the rankings. So the total offense was 63rd. Their total defense was 126th out of 131. They gave up 468 yards per game on average. Scoring offense was 61st. So again, perfectly serviceable, middle of the pack. The scoring defense was 128th. They gave up 38 points per game on average. So, I mean, how are you meant to win games when that happens? The rushing offense was 99th. They only averaged 125 yards per game, only got 14 touchdowns and 3.75 yards per carry on the year. The rushing defense was 130th. So only one team did worse at defending the run last year. They gave up 243 yards per game, 34 touchdowns, and 6.12 yards per carry. So every time someone ran the ball on them, they got at least 6 yards on average over the season. That just is not good enough. The passing offense was 32nd, so a lot better, 267 yards, 25 touchdowns. Passing defense was 69th, so again, serviceable. gave up 225 yards and 20 touchdowns. Team sacks, they were 124th with only 16 on the year. Sacks allowed, they were 90th, which was 32 they gave up, so double the amount they gave up than they got. Team tackles for loss, they were 113th, only got 55. Tackles for loss allowed 102nd, only 80th. And the turnover margin, they were 91st. They gained 22, they lost 25. So very stout there, Ryan. Offense and defense completely contrasted. I mean, you've got a middle-of-the-road offense, which is fine for a COSD. That's actually pretty good. But the defense giving up nearly 470 yards and 40 points per game, you're just not going to do anything with that. And when you're getting shredded for 250 yards on the ground, teams controlling the clock against you, and you're just not going to win games that way, are you?
No, that... I don't throw around a lot of hyperbole, but that defense was rancid. That was by far one of the worst defenses in Div 1 and Div 2. You'll struggle to find worse defenses in the FCS than that. Like I said, if you're scoring 34 points a game and you're losing, you know something is wrong. If an FBS team is scoring 34 points in a lot of games, they should be winning them all. You should not be having a handicap of minus 30 points. You cannot be needing to score 34 points and still lose.
Yeah.
You should only be needing to score 20 to 25 points every week to hopefully get your defense to win your games.
Yeah.
If that defense does not improve, heads will be rolling, and quickly.
Absolutely.
Because 470 yards losing a game is just, there's no words for it. It undermines all the offensive work and everything that gets done. And the only way that gets fixed is by scooping up portal talent, firing a head coach, or firing a defensive coordinator. They're the only two real ways you can fix a defense that quickly.
Grandizer goes, that defense is rubbish. It is. You know what? We like to teach Grandizer British words, so I'm going to get Grandizer to use Balderdash eventually. Just say the defense is Balderdash. That would make my day. But all is not lost for them. This year might be different. And Ryan, one of your favourite players in the country is on this roster this year. They picked up, and I'll just quickly go through it. So the quarterback this year, hell of a get for them, despite him having a rotten year last year. Hank Backmeyer. Make no mistake, this is one hell of a get for a team like Louisiana Tech and Sonny Cumbie. He resides as one of the highest rated quarterback transfers in CUSA history. He's the former Boise State quarterback. He started 29 games over 4 seasons for the Broncos, the majority of those in his first 3. He has 6,605 passing yards, 41 touchdowns with just 19 interceptions. Cumbie had to start 4 quarterbacks last year as the position was very unstable, but now he has the guy who can truly implement his air raid offense. Backmeyer is a pure pocket passer who will stand and deliver with the ball. He's not known as the most explosive, but he is hella reliable as a passer. If you want a solid, stable passer, this is the guy. I mean, this could be the game changer for them.
Oh, yeah. In an air raid offense, Hank is going to absolutely kill it this year. He will put big numbers. If they protect him on that offensive line, he will ping that ball out left, right, and centre. He was a part of a really good Broncos team. Everything they did good, like say trying to get to the Mountain West title games, went through him. And when they struggled, it was also through him. Like I say, because last year, like I say, it ended up getting replaced in the season. And even though they just missed out on time, it was really up and down his time at the Broncos. So he decided to come here. But yeah, a great get, Sonny. A great get for the Conference USA. And he's looking to restore his confidence. He's looking to prove some doubters wrong. And he's expecting to come here and win a title. He is not coming in with endless expectations. He will also expect them to provide him with weapons. One of the better, I'm pretty sure as well, he's got a brother. There's a couple of Backmeyers. I don't know if one of them's here, But I don't have to try to get some. I know there's like a few Backmeyers in football, but yeah, I've got high hopes for Hank this year.
Yeah.
I just hope the defense doesn't let him down, because he doesn't deserve to struggle.
No, absolutely not. But speaking of favourite players, they actually have a second of your favourite players on this team as well. I will go through. I don't know if there's another Backmeyer. I will have to do that, but there is no doubt this is huge for them. Like I say, you start your offense with your quarterback. They have potentially one of the best quarterbacks in the division now, so great there. And the good news keeps on rolling. I'm just going to come up straight out here. I have Louisiana Tech as a dark horse for this conference this year, and this is the reason why, Backmeyer's there. But like Liberty, this is a team. This is going to experience a high amount of transition on the field. Cumby knows, obviously, there is a lot of work to do, especially with that defense. He's brought in 24 players from the transfer portal, 9 of whom are from Power 5 schools, so he knows there's a problem and he's trying to fix it. And it's not just in the portal, it's also on the recruiting trail. He's turned that around very quickly. So the Bulldogs 21-member signing class this year, it's the highest rated class in Conference USA, and it ranks 5th amongst all group of 5 schools. They ranked 70th nationally in the Rivals 2023 team recruiting rankings, edging out its own 2020 class by 1 spot, and it is the best slot in program history. So he has hit the portal, and they have 2 very good recruiting classes who have come into the program now, and you're going to start to see these guys filter through into the team. 70th for a CUSA team in its recruiting class is really good. Now, obviously, he's solved his biggest issue with quarterback with Backmeyer. They've brought in Craig Williams, who's the transfer running back from Baylor. He had 560 yards rushing in the Power 5 last season, and me and Ryan love our Baylor running backs. That's another one for them. And another guy, Ryan, DeColdest Crawford, is now also with Louisiana Tech. So the guy who does all the weird and wonderful adverts, DeColdest now has a chance to prove himself as a top receiving weapon, and this will be the best quarterback he plays with in college, likely. So defensively, 17 of the 24 new arrivals from the portal are on defense. So not only does he realize that the defense is bad and that he needs to go into the portal, but he realizes where exactly in the team that it is bad. The DC there is Scott Power. He's in his second year with the team. He comes from Stephen F. Austin initially, and he's been back and raided them for 3 different players. We know Stephen F. Austin have been a talent factory. They've sent good players to the last 2 drafts. They've poached 3 players from there. It's going to take time for it to come together with so many new faces around, but as we keep saying, the CUSA is in upheaval this year. There is no hierarchy. There is no established big teams, maybe outside of Western Kentucky. Tech might fancy their chances at trying to break into the upper echelons of the table if the offense can fire and this defense gets a little bit better. I mean, when your recruiting classes are good, when you're going into the portal, you've got the quarterback, the ingredients are there for them taking us completely by surprise this year.
Yeah. We've seen a Western Kentucky team with Bailey Zappa just go out there and outscore teams with a really average defense. At times, actually, a terrible defense. I've seen some dreadful defensive performances from Western Kentucky. And Zappa and Cropper dug them out of holes time and time again on offense by just scoring 50, 60 points and the defense only giving up 40. It's not a mold you really want to go down. It's not how you want to win games, but it's been done before. It's a blueprint, and I'm kind of looking at this team and thinking that's kind of what they want to do. You score 40, we'll score 50. But yeah, DeColdest Crawford's a weird one, like you say. A huge, 4-star recruit in Nebraska. Really famous because, well, the name and that. Didn't see a lot of playing time. Obviously signed a big NIL deal with that refrigeration company. And then randomly hits the portal. I didn't see it coming. And then, of all places, lands here. I'm not sure how he got here, how he's convinced to come here. But on paper, he's supposed to be like a really talented kid. So far, he's not had any chance really to show it. He's got to show it now. He has got to come out and show himself to be a true dominant receiver in this division. Like, there's no two ways about it. You can't come in with such a big reputation and flop. Not in the CUSA.
No.
Him and Hank are going to have to be like a 1,300-yard receiving duo. Like, he's going to have to come out for big numbers. If they do, the ceiling for this team is make the title game off of their offense. They could high power their team straight to a championship. The flaw is if that defense doesn't get fixed, then yeah, they win 3, 4, 5 games, and Sonny Coombs potentially gets fired.
Yeah, which would be
if they back him so heavily and he recruits so heavily, and the team doesn't get that much better, you look at him to be the issue. He ain't the right guy to lead them. So yeah, it's a make or break here, almost.
Which would be a shame, because like I say, he's getting the recruiting there. So if he gets that bed for himself to establish all these young guys he's recruiting there, they could be the next CUSA powerhouse. You know, sustained success from recruiting well, hitting the portal well, and apparently being able to get some really good recruits in from the portal. So it's going to be a really interesting one for them. Lions 1960, I see your question. We will discuss that once we've done this. We've got a few more teams to go, because that question is going to be a conversation in itself. The schedule, I'm not sure with this. 6 home, 6 away, so an even split, no favouritism here or there. They start at home to Florida International, so you can make a point there. Then you're away to SMU, but they are sans Tanner Mordecai now. You're at home to Northwestern State and North Texas. Then you've got away at Nebraska, away at UTEP, at home to Western Kentucky, away to Middle Tennessee, which is a bit of a gauntlet. Then you're at home to New Mexico, you're away at Liberty. Then you finish with the 2 new teams. You're at Sam Houston and you're at Jacksonville State. So, I mean, I look at that schedule. Three of your first 4 games are at home. You've got Northwestern State, Florida International, even North Texas. They're undergoing transition this year in the Sun Belt. You've got the potential to set yourself a good platform for this year, and you feel like you need it when you've got away trips to Nebraska, UTEP, Middle Tennessee, and then Western Kentucky is your only home game in the next 4. But if you're still like 500 or that point after that, you got all the new guys and some low-hanging fruit on the end. So there is a road again to them really performing this year. But it could also go really wrong if you don't start well.
Very interesting schedule, because Sonny Coombs like football is SMU football. Like I say, they're an air raid offense that plays no defense. But Tanner Mordecai and Rashee Rice have gone. Like I say, I don't know who even gonna be the guys at SMU. I think LA Tech could score loads of points against SMU. They might concede loads, but that will be a really good benchmark of how this offense has come on, because SMU, they ship points for fun. Like, they are such a topsy-turvy team that can be upset at any point. So that game will be a huge benchmark to see how confident this offense is and if it's firing on full cylinders. If this team can live up to potential, that is a huge potential upset. That could be a big banana skin for SMU. They could be worried about this offense. And yeah, there's some tough road games. Like I say, even Nebraska, like, they're a team that is also in transition. Like I say, they've lost a lot of players. They called this. Like I say, they've gone through quarterback cycles. Like I say, Casey Thompson. They've also struggled with coaching. A few coaches have struggled there. So it's not bad. Like I said, they don't fear SMU or Nebraska. There's no reason at all to fear them teams, because frankly, the last few years, they kind of stunk, at least on one side of the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, the in-conference schedule will be where the damage is done.
Yeah.
I said, can they match Western Kentucky, because they're also an air raid offense? So can their defense step up against a team that also wants to throw the ball maybe 40, 50 times a game? And then you get to the end of the season and you've got 2 potential cakewalks, which might not be able to just not be able to stop the fire raining down of offense. So they could make a bowl game.
Yeah, you've just.
If they've got 5-6 wins going into the season, all those for last 2 games, I'd expect them to potentially march in. Yeah, there's 7-8 wins on this schedule. If if they can play complementary football. And complementary will be the word this year they should pin up on the wall like Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
If the offense goes out well, the defense goes out well. If the offense goes out and turns the ball over, defense has got to go get it back. They can't be a one-sided team because it just won't work.
Yeah, you've got to chop away at that 250 yards per game you give up against the run. You have got to chop sort of 70, 80 yards minimum off that to be able to really go forward.
And the offense score it, get reckon up 450.
Yeah.
It needs to be 200, 200.
Yeah.
The offense can't have to do that much.
No, absolutely not. As for, to finish this off, the player to watch, well, DeColdis Crawford, keep your eye on him. He could break out big this year. But I go with a guy who's already been there. I love my running backs in the CUSA, so I've picked out Marquise Crosby here. So whilst Cumbie was trying to find his signal caller last year, like I said, 4 quarterbacks, the 5'10", 185-pound Crosby, he was the most steady source of offense for them in 2022. He had a 197-yard day against Stephen F. Austin, which set the tone for a year. He had 918 yards and 9 scores on just 183 carries. As the quarterbacks got even worse and worse, his workload increased. He had 3 100-yard days in the team's last 5 outings, each coming on north of 20 carries. So this guy is small and diminutive, but he can pound the ball. And with Hank Backmeyer now in Ruston with him, that should allow him to take a little bit less of the burden off him, do more with less carries. I think you're going to see him shine. So Marquise Crosby, the running back with Louisiana Tech, look for him. But also, like I say, Hank Backmeyer is going to be must-watch there, and so is DeColdis Crawford. That offense could be great. Now, we move on. We're sort of reaching the latter middle of these now, so we go to the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, established 1911, play at the Johnny Floyd Stadium. Their 2021 record was 7-6. They were 4-4 in the CUSA. Their 2022 record 8-5, 4-4 in CUSA. So kind of really similar there. The rivalries are with Western Kentucky. That's known as the 100 Miles of Hate. That series is actually Western Kentucky lead it 36, 35, 31. It was exactamundo last year, but Western Kentucky snuck ahead because they beat them last year. And then with the Troy Trojans, you've got the battle for the Palladium. Go back to last year's CUSA pod that preview we did. I went through the whole history of that. They play for a 3-foot basewood statue of Athena, the Greek goddess of love, laced in gold leaf. Quite a lovely trophy. Coach there, Rick Stockstill, in his 18th season. Yes, he's been head coach at Middle Tennessee since, about 2006 now. The notes I had last year was that the longest yard was released then. That feels like a millennium ago since that film first came there. He's the joint 4th longest tenured coach in the FBS. He's got a 109-103 record. He's 4-6 in bowl games, but he's won bowl games in the last 2 consecutive seasons. He won a Sun Belt title in 2006, a CUSA East title in 2018. Had a good period of success in 12 years where the team never finished below 3rd in the conference, but the last 4 years the record has declined. They've not been above 500 in conference games, and whilst he's 500 overall, like for his career there, the stats are not kind to him, especially when it comes to the better teams with winning records. As of 2022, his record against winning teams is 18-60, and against out-of-conference teams who finish with winning records, that goes down to 4-28. But he got a contract extension last year after just 2 games. Sees him through to the 2028 season. We talked about Stockstill last year, Ryan. He's been there forever, but it just feels like they're in such a rut at the minute of mediocrity, and they're not sort of getting out of it. I mean, no more epitomised last year than when they went and absolutely trounced the Hurricanes, Miami. Big upset win for them. And then they just lost 3 on the bounce after that. It's kind of like, come on, man, you've got to make the jump sooner or later.
That contract extension was just a ridiculous idea. A guy that has had no success in conference, extending him further. I said their overall records are fine, but when you talk about in the CUSA and against the CUSA rivals, it's just not good enough. And they continuously let themselves down. Like I say, they go on the road, they get a huge upset against the Hurricanes. But does it mean anything? No, because then they go screw it up. Like I say, losing back-to-back games. And this team should be in title games. This team should be competing to win the CUSA, but it's not. Consistently, it's not, because when it comes down to it, conference record is poor. And if anything, they should have been, instead of extending him, they should have said, if now UTSA are gone, if you don't make a title game this year, you're fired. We're getting rid of you because you're average. You define mediocrity. You cannot take us that next level. This team now is just going to continue to just tread the line as long as it's not as that. I just don't understand why they tied them down longer. Unless they're suddenly going to make a jump now, all these teams have left. But that just tells me that they're just a team that can capitalise, not a team that's ready to make the jump. So I don't know. I don't like the move.
No, I was surprised when they did it. But I mean, it's like the division is open, the conference is open now. So if you can go ahead and start winning it because you've got a solid coach foundation, great. But I feel like in a year or two, if you're still doing this, then you've got to cut bait. I know a lot of people talk about the stability he's built there, how he's evolved with the game, and he can still win games, which is great. But again, like I said, when you're playing the best teams, that record stinks against winning teams. You've got to be able to beat the better ones. You can't just stay mediocre for your entire career. So anyhow, we'll go through the wins and losses. Lions 1960 says, Crosby sounds like someone to watch. Is he also a receiving threat? Last year was his first year in college football. He had 9 receptions for 70 yards or something. So, not last year, but this will be his second year. And you got Backmeyer there. So, if you're going to watch him this year, which I suggest you do, he might take a leap in his receiving game this year because they've got a much better quarterback. So, the wins last year at Colorado State versus Tennessee State. That huge win against the Miami Hurricanes, but they lost 3 times after. They won away at UTEP, at home to Charlotte and Florida Atlantic, away to Florida International, and they beat San Diego State in a bowl game, so they got the bowl win last year. The losses, though, at James Madison, the upstarts from the Sun Belt, versus UTSA, Coosa champions, at UAB, who were up there, versus Western Kentucky, who were 3rd in the conference, and then at Louisiana Tech. So you kind of got losses against the big teams.
They can't do it when it matters, can they?
No. Losses against the big teams, which is the big thing here. You lose to 2 of the top 3 teams of the conference. You just got to get over that boundary somehow. So the stats for the team: total offense was 78th at 378 yards per game. Total defense was 96th. They gave up 409 yards per game. Scoring offense was 62nd. They averaged just under 29 points per game. The defense was 78th, averaged just under 28 points per game. So they were a little bit better on offense and defense. The rushing offense was 114th. They could not run the ball. Just 108.5 yards per game. Just 20 touchdowns. Only 3.1 yards per carry. But the Russian defense was similarly stingy. They were 23rd in the nation defending against the run, only gave up 116 yards per game, just 14 touchdowns, and only allowed 3.36 yards per carry. So against the run, good. And now this is where it flips. The passing offense was 36th, 265 yards per game, 21 touchdowns. Passing defense, 130th. Out of 131, I believe New Mexico was the worst, if I'm right. They gave up 292 yards per game against the pass and 30 touchdowns, so nearly 300 yards per game through the air. Team sacks, they were 24th, they had 36. Sacks allowed, they were 99th, they gave up 37, so gave and received equally. Team tackles for loss, they were 24th as well, 89th, and then tackles for loss allowed 124th, so they gave up a lot as well. The turnover margin, though, 5th in the nation. They gained 30 turnovers, which was joint 2nd. They lost 18, so it's very obvious, right, where the flaws are here. The rushing offense is not complementing the passing offense, which is much better, and the pass defense they got absolutely obliterated. It's why they got so many takeaways, because the secondary guys fed on just like a bazillion passes per game. It's very clear where they've got to improve this season.
yeah, it's frustrating because on paper you've just read out a really good team. But the problem is, like I said, they live by the pass and they die by the pass. They can outpass a team, but when it comes to actually being able to defend it, they just get rinsed. You wouldn't have thought they sent a safety to the draft with how bad that secondary was. You wouldn't have thought your crush came from that secondary because he was so active. Yeah. Because that secondary around him was so bad, he stood out so much, and now he's gone. So you're taking one of the worst secondaries in football, and it's just lost its heart and soul. How does this team respond to losing Reed Blankenship? I do not know. Like, it can't get any worse. The secondary physically cannot get much worse. But does it get any better? Well, you're inclined to say no. And that's the weird thing. When you get a team when it's so obvious where the areas are that need to work on, trying to fix them sometimes is harder because you put so much emphasis on it, and teams know where to hurt you. When a team lines up against the middle Red Raiders, they say, let's just play spread offense. Let's just throw the ball on them and force them to stop it because we know they can't. So this year, like I say, the team can't beat the good conference teams and it can't stop the pass. So we know where it needs to fix it. So evaluating this team in the season will be really easy.
Yeah.
Did this team get better at stopping the pass? Yes, it got better. Did that mean they were able to be more competitive in conference and go better than 4-4? Yes, it did. So they made a title game. It has to be, doesn't it? If a team fixes its errors, they have to make the title game.
Yeah.
So this team now is ready to win it all if it fixes the glaring, obvious issues. So this team, I've got a lot of faith in. It's already established, yep. Like I say, it's stable. It knows where the problem areas are. There's nothing worse than a team doesn't know where it's going wrong. But a team that knows exactly what is going wrong and needs to fix it, well, they're the teams I'm going to look at the most because there's nowhere to hide. There will be nowhere to hide if that passing defense is still terrible and they still can't run the ball.
No, absolutely. And like I say, and then you've got to rely on the better parts of the team staying good, and this is where the season preview for them comes in. So the quarterback, Nicholas Vattiato, I hope I've said his name right, 6'1", 187 pounds, 2 years playing for Middle Tennessee. He's thrown for 1,338 yards with 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, but 1,000 of those yards came in 2021 when he was a true freshman and stepped in for injury. He helped them win a bowl game that year after the starter got injured in season. But Chase Cunningham, their starter last year, is gone now, so this is Vattiato's job most likely for the season. But a very worrying stat for him last year. He played just 33 snaps last year, fumbled the ball 8 times. He managed to fumble the ball once every 4 snaps. He fumbled the ball. But I've done a lot of research into him. His coaches love him. They say he's a very cerebral quarterback. He's got a high football IQ despite the inconsistent stats. This is going to be his first year as a true starter, and hopefully build upon the progress that Middle Tennessee made last year. The preview itself, like I said, they were a team of opposites. Horrible at running the ball, wonderful at defending the run. Great passing the ball, atrocious defending the pass. Racked up the stats on defense, but it was still awful because it was really just stat padding. As Ryan said, consistency, key for the season. On offense, the passing game accounted for 71% of their offensive yards. That has to change. But like I said, Chase Cunningham is gone. Their top 3 receivers from last year are gone. Vattiato is experienced in the system, so hopefully he can hit the ground running. Offensive line needs to get better though. They've lost the starting centre, but 77% of their snaps from last year on the line come back, so hopefully the unit has grown through hardship and they will get better, as sometimes happens in college football. Their top running back, Frank Peasant, is back. They've added portal help as well to get the ground game moving as well. Defensively, maybe they're not as bad as the 96th total defense ranking sort of indicated. They could be sneaky good. That run defense is elite, and they're returning that part of their defense. So 13 of the top 17 tacklers and 4 of the top 5 tackle for loss guys are all coming back. So those first 2 levels of the defense are pretty good. It's the secondary that you've got to work on. and they've lost star safety Decorian Patterson. He had 7 interceptions, 12 pass breakups. He transferred out to UCF. And the schedule is a real trial by fire as well. I'll just quickly go through it. So they start with a double visit to the SEC. They're away at Alabama. They're away at Missouri. Then they're at home to Murray State and Colorado State. Then they're away at Western Kentucky. At home to Jacksonville State, Louisiana Tech. But then they're away at Liberty. They're away at New Mexico State. They hit a bye. Then finishes a lot easier. They're at home to Florida International. At home to UTEP. And then they're away to Sam at Houston. But I mean, God, those first 3 away games. Bama, Mizzou, Western Kentucky. I mean, I guess you've got to go and beat Mizzou in this situation. I mean, they're low-hanging fruit. They beat the Hurricanes last year. Why can't they beat Mizzou? But they've got to win those 2 home games for one. And you feel like they've got to take one, maybe try and take Kentucky down with them.
Yeah. Those first 2 games are about picking up no injuries. Pride against Bama, you don't want to lose 6-0. But if you do, well, it's to be expected. Like I say, Missouri have struggled now for years. After like Matty Mark and Connor Bazelak really struggled at the quarterback position. So that's a game where if you don't win it, that's fine, but the performance is what matters. You have to go out there and put in a professional performance against an SEC opponent. As you say, beating Miami, like that might lead some fans to believe that, oh yeah, we beat them, we can go and meet Missouri. It's not about beating them, it's about getting, like, say, a quarterback that is still very inexperienced, some time to warm up his arm. Let's say, so by the time they get to Western Kentucky, the quarterback is comfortable. And by then, hopefully, they've run the ball, because from the sounds of it, this team is not going to have that fancy, explosive passing offense this year. So the run game is going to have to pull its bloody socks up and pull its weight. It didn't do it last year. It's got to do it this year. Because as you mentioned, Gase is gone. A lot of receivers are gone. That quarterback is going to need help, and he's going to need it early.
Yeah.
So yeah, the schedule starts difficult. They're really going to have to come together and find some sort of a style on offense, some sort of complementary style. So be interesting to see, especially against the Missouri game. Like, we'll see how quickly Missouri can start. If they look nervous, if they look a bit tentative about playing this team, then maybe you can just potentially get a sniff of an upset. If they start hot, then yeah, this team could find itself 0-2 very quickly, and it could have shipped 100 points.
Yeah.
And God knows how many yards. So for confidence, I hope that hasn't happened, that they get to week 3 and they've just been absolutely shellacked.
Yeah, and you're in year 19 of your tenure, so there's kind of no excuses for your starting off. So I know it's there, but I think you have to take down one of Missouri or Western Kentucky and prove a point that, like, yeah, we're here and we're here to stay. So you would like to see a win in that, and then, you know, the schedule eases up a little bit, and then if you can beat Western Kentucky away, you can win a lot of those other games after, and you can make the tangible progress that you so desire. So yeah, they need to start well. Lions 1960 goes 8 fumbles. Does he have small hands? I'm sure it's more to do with the fact he got sacked 40 times and his offensive line just couldn't pass protect. I think a lot of those fumbles were strip sacks and things like that because the poor kid had no time to throw and he was still essentially a freshman. Replacing a guy who had 7 picks sounds like a tall task. Who's stepping into his spot? Yeah, that's a big loss for them in the portal there. They've hit the portal themselves. They've brought a few guys in, and one of their backs I'm about to talk about. Now, actually, because we're at that point, finishing off the Middle Tennessee preview. So the player to watch actually is in the secondary. So the cornerback Teldrick Ross. I watched some tape on him this week. I was very impressed with him. He's 5'10". He's 190 pounds. Now, whilst the unit he was in, the passing defense, was the second worst in the nation, sometimes that allows people to blossom because it is trial by fire, moulded in the chaos, as it were. So Teldrick Ross, he had 2 picks and 14 pass breakups last season, and over the last 3 years, he's only given up 50% on his targets. Like last year, he was targeted 88 times, only gave up 44 receptions on those. So he is one of those who's really come through a difficult period there, and hopefully with a little bit more stability this year, and against some of these teams who are going to be throwing the ball on him a lot, like Western Kentucky when you go there, this is going to be the opportunity for Teldrick Ross to shine. I mean, he is feisty, he hits hard, but he's also very instinctive. That's why, like I say, 14 pass breakups last year. He looks the real deal. So it might be on the offense, you'll see a few guys there, but look at the secondary as well, because as Ryan said, if they fix that secondary even a little bit, they will potentially be a really good team next season. Right, we're into the last few teams now, so we are going to move on to the New Mexico State Aggies, established 1893, play at the Aggie Memorial Stadium. 2022 season, they went 7-6, and right, we talked a lot about coaches who did jobs in really bad situations last year. We were like at Duke, your Tulanes, your Jim Moras, all these guys. A lot of coaches really surprised people last year, and Jerry Kill, the head coach at New Mexico State, he's a guy we didn't really talk about, but when you sort of go back and look what this team did last year, yes, it was questionable how they were elected to a bowl game and won it, but they still did at a program which is traditionally really, really bad. The rivalries with New Mexico, that's the Rio Grande rivalry, and UTEP, that is the Battle of I-10. They play for the Silver Spoon and the Brass Spittoon. They're losing both of those, but they did win the Rio Grande rivalry last year, even though they've won less than half the games that New Mexico have there. So as I say, Jerry Kill is the head coach. It is his second season. He is 61 years old, took over the disastrous reign that was Doug Martin. In 8 seasons, he only had 1 season where they won more than 3 games. Kill took 1 year to match that tally, and he more than doubled that 3-game win streak. He is vastly experienced. He has presided over multiple school rebuilds on bad teams. He's just unfortunately had a lot of health issues over the years. Big Ten aficionados may remember him when he was at Minnesota. He was just getting that team firing after they'd been through a rough patch, and then he had to give up that job through health concerns, and they thought he wouldn't coach again. But New Mexico State saw that he sort of returned to the arena, and they convinced him to go there. And he took one of the toughest jobs in college football. I think me and Ryan coined it the toughest job in college football, maybe after Hawaii. And after a 1-5 start, it looked every bit like it was impossible, and this might be a short-lived affair. But they had a remarkable turnaround at the end of last year, including, as we mentioned earlier, twonking Liberty, like putting nearly 50 down on them. That made everyone suddenly take notice of what's happening there in La Cruces. And this was with the defense that he inherited that was in the mid-120s. That's how they were ranked the year he arrived. And the offense had lost its quarterback, their 8 most productive receivers, and their star running back. So he had no talent there to work with last year whatsoever. He got them 7 wins by hook or by crook. Now the wins, they were against Miami at home, New Mexico at home, away at UMass, versus Lamar, at Liberty, versus Valparaiso, and versus Bowling Green in the bowl game. The ones they lost, at home to Nevada, that was bad, but then away at Minnesota, away at Wisconsin, away at UTEP, away at Missouri, and at home to Florida International. So that's an SEC team, 2 Big Ten teams all on the road, and then a couple of conference, well, they will be conference games this year, but I mean, overall, right, I know that schedule they won sounds like easy games, but New Mexico State are a team over the years, they don't win easy games. They just don't win games. What he had to work with last year, that was a tremendous effort.
Oh, yeah, like, if there's any Aggies fans watching this, I'm sorry, but they're a bottom feeder. And for the last probably 10 years, they've been a bottom feeder. And it's no secret. Everyone knows it. Last year was bizarre. Like I say, they beat the teams they were supposed to beat. They beat some teams that they had no right to beat, if I'm all honest. Like they shouldn't have been beating Liberty. Like that not by that margin. The teams they were supposed to lose to, they lost to. Like there's no shame in losing the SET. The Big Ten teams, they were teams who expected to lose to. And after 1 and 5, I was like, okay, well, this is how their season goes because this is how it goes every year. I was like, this is just a story panning out every year, and it's just a program that probably won't have a football team in a few years because they keep investing money into it and they don't get any reward whatsoever. Their attendances were super low, and then I don't know what happened. They just won some games, and we like to say a very lackluster roster with no household names, a coach that has been around the block once or twice, and they somehow salvaged something, and then in a bizarre end to the season, got a ball game and won it. Like it's kind of like a fairy tale ending. Was it a complete fluke that season? I'm pretty sure it is. This is the team I'm most interested to see this year. Was that an absolute just weird thing that happens? Like, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and when you come down to the stats for this season, my God, are there some really interesting ones there. I just want to quickly say hello to Lisa De Lorenzo. She's joined us in the YouTube chat. Hope you are well, Lisa. Lions 1960 goes, sounds like they started and finished just like our Lions. That's damn good coaching, I think. Yeah, Kill's done a hell of a good job here, but I mentioned Kill arrived last year, so the season before, his defence ranked 124th against the run and 125th against the pass, I think it was. I'm only going to give you one guess, but guess where his defence, in total defence, ranked in 2022? Got one guess.
104th.
30th. They were the 30th best defense in the nation in total defense. He raised them nearly 100 positions in a season. And I looked down at the stats, and they're not false stats. So overall, the offense was 109th. That's 330 yards per game, which I mean for them, that's still pretty high. Total defense, 30th. Only gave up 336 yards per game. So only 6 yards difference between their offense and defense. That means you're going to win. The scoring offense was 82nd. So maybe overall the offense wasn't efficient, but it scored points. Scored 25.5 points per game. The scoring defense was 47th. Gave up just a smidge under 24 points a game. So again, scoring more than they're giving up. The rushing offense was 57th. The rushing defense was 65th. So really good across the board for both. They threw 162 yards per game, gave up 150 yards per game, scored 25 rushing touchdowns, gave up 21. So very similar, but always in their favour. The passing offense was 120th, which was bad, 170 yards per game, 18 touchdowns. Their passing defense was 16th in the nation. 16th best passing defense of everybody. 186.8 yards per game, 14 touchdowns. Team sacks, they were 64th, they had 28 sacks allowed. They were 23rd, only gave up 16, but they do tend to run the ball a bit more. Team tackles for loss, they were 66th. Team tackles for loss allowed, 67th. Only place they really struggled, the turnover margin was 101st. They gained 14, lost 19, but I mean, that's sort of steady middle of the table across the board, but there are some elite aspects to that defense, and he did it in 1 year when he inherited one of the worst going. You don't raise 97 spots on your defense in a season. That rarely happens. So you're right, it might be a fluke, but my God, what a job he did in 1 year.
Yeah, remarkable. And I've always said that one of the most misleading stats in the nation is turnover margin, because we've talked about every team so far. They've given up more than 19. They've given up way more than 19. This team did not turn the ball over at all. They just didn't take it away. So if they're only -5 in turnover defense, and that puts them as one of the worst in the nation, like look at teams at like Ohio State and Bama. If they only turn the ball over 19 times in a season, like people won't bat an eyelid. Like I said, this defense should be applauded, or this offense should be applauded for only turn over the ball 19 times. Just the defense did take it away often, but the offense did not give the ball away at all. They did not lose many possessions, so that deserves to be applauded. So turnover margin You can be 100th in the nation, and it just means you just didn't get many takeaways. You just didn't turn the ball over a lot, let's say. So that's the stat that always sounds way worse than it is. But yeah, what he did with a defense that before that was giving up 350, 400 yards a game for the last 7 years is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I was astonished when I looked, because where I get my stats from, I always go to like the third page for teams like this, and I'm like, hang on, they're on the first bit. They're in the first little bit I can see. That's crazy. So great year last year, 7 wins, bowl win, amazing. Looking to 2023 now, this is going to be, like you said, is this a fluke or is this a real rebuild? Quarterback is Diego Pavia. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. Transferred in from the New Mexico Military Institute for the 2022 season. I didn't have him on our list last year because I don't think he transferred in. It was quite a late one. And he had a decent year after having a really bad start. So get this, he had 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions going into week 7. He'd not thrown a touchdown pass before week 7, which is why they had the horrible 1-5 start. But it came together. So overall, he had 1,443 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. 3 of those he threw in week 1. So if you take week 1 out the equation, only threw 3 picks all season. He had 536 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground as he showcased an previously unknown dual threat ability, only fumbled the ball twice. He is not the most accurate passer at the first 2 levels, but this guy has a big arm with a very accurate deep pass. And just to show that, New Mexico State were 9th in the entire country in explosive play rate, so that's plays over 20 yards and more. They were 9th in the nation. That is the sort of offense that he knew that his quarterback has a big arm, a big accurate arm, not so good over the short to mid stuff. He built his offense around it to great success. Now, they have actually brought in Texas A&M transfer Eli Stowers in the offseason to provide competition, but I do fancy Pavia to keep his job there, especially how he got better over the season. Now, the preview in general, what can Kill do in year 2? There were no expectations for them in 2022, yet he got a winning record and a bowl win. Is progress for this team, Ryan? Is it seeing more improvement, not necessarily winning more games, or is it winning more games? What would be improvement for them year 2?
First of all, it's not been a fluke. So first of all, it's not going out there and winning 3 games all season, because that just proves it wasn't real, or what they built wasn't lasting. I think, for one, if they win the same amount of games, that's fine, but they've got to start better. They cannot go 1-5 again, because that will tell me this team is not in it for the long haul. They have not learned anything. So, starting faster, that's fine. Do you know what? Even if they only win 6 games this year, but they're more consistent throughout the year, I still think that's an improvement. Like I say, if they start good, finish good, it goes a bit wobbly in the middle, that's fair enough. So for me, winning more games does not define improvement this year. Because as you mentioned, last year probably set an unrealistic. Some fans will have an unrealistic goal for this year, thinking, "Oh, we should be competing for the title." You're probably not going to be. Like I say, you've had your first good year in best part of a decade. Don't get greedy. Now they need to consolidate it. If they make a bowl game again, that's great, because it sounds like they've got a quarterback this year that was non-existent for 6 weeks and suddenly realised, okay, I'm not too bad at this. So yeah, growing room for their quarterback will be really big. I say if he can have a really good year, not just a good half of the season, that'll be big for them long term. So yeah, it's more about consolidation. Try and win the same amount of games again, and that proves to me that you're a team that is maybe starting to turn the corner. If you crash and fall on your face, I'll be like, oh, they were a flash in the pan. They fooled me.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's consolidation. When you're undergoing such a big rebuild, you've got to set the foundations first. And last year did set lofty ones, but like I say, if you can do the same again, then you're going to set them more, and then next year you can really look at pushing on, especially now they're in a conference and they will be able to start competing for titles. There is legitimate aspirations for them now. Maybe not this year, but in the near future. So the offense brings back 80% of last year's production. That includes the key pieces at quarterback, the O-line, receiver, and running back. It didn't rank well year one, but it's a brand new scheme and there were growing pains. But the second half of the season, it began to click and you saw it did. You don't drop 50 on Liberty if you're a bad offense. I mean, I know sometimes they give up a lot, but last year they were one of the best defenses going. Now the problems come on defense. You know, they had a meteoric rise from the mid-120s to 30 last season. That really happens in year one, and you're losing half of last year's production. So you're not likely going to be 30th again, but if you can sort of stay in the 60s, the 70s, then don't put it past them being able to do another stunning effort. But, you know, the DC there's done a hell of a job. So the DC is Nate Drailing. He comes from the Pittsburgh Panthers system, and you listen to me and Ryan last year, that Pittsburgh Panthers defense, they know how to make NFL talent. They know how to make a mean-ass defense. I talked about it a lot. And you saw it last year. You saw him start to implement that Pittsburgh-type defense. So you wouldn't back against him doing the same again. So they are in good hands. So bringing back a lot on offense, you know, getting some of your key pieces back on defense. It's just, can you manage the expectations? Well, let's see the schedule: 6 home games, 7 away games. So they've actually got 13, more than others there. So you start at home to UMass and at home to Western Illinois. Perfect chance to start your season there. Then you're away to Liberty, away to New Mexico, away to Hawaii. Those second 2 away games, very manageable. Then you're at home to Florida International and Sam Houston. Just come up to the FBS, away at UTEP and Louisiana Tech, at home to Middle Tennessee. Then the end of the season's a bit icky. You're away at Western Kentucky, you're away at Auburn, and you finish at home to Jacksonville State. There's more than 6 wins on there. Easily more than 6 wins on there for the team that starts off hot.
Oh yeah, you look at 3 of those first 4 games, you should be winning them. Maybe not Liberty, but Hawaii, Western Illinois, first game of the season. 2-2 at worst, best 3-1, and your season is set up really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see them doing good things this year. Brent, Lions 1960s, Brent, I forget it's Brent. Hi Brent, hope you're doing well. He goes, raising the defense almost 100 spots, is that a record? It can't be far off. Not many times you get something like as noticeable as that over a season. At a team like that, you do not expect them to be a top 30 defense in a season, but they were. And then just to finish them off, I've got the player to watch. So again, this is CUSA. I do like my running back. So Star Thomas, the running back here, 6 foot, 225 pounds. He gave up offers from Big Ten schools, including Minnesota, who is a running back factory, and instead he chose to grind his way up the ladder with New Mexico State instead. In his first season, he had over 500 yards at 5 yards per carry, 5 rushing touchdowns, and he showcased a really good receiving skill set as well. He had 3 receiving touchdowns on the year. I love this guy. He can run over you, but he also has the finesse when it comes to avoiding contact and playing as a receiver. So he's not just a brute. He can be Beauty and the Beast. The New Mexico State offense, it needs to take a leap this year to help balance out the team. I think Thomas is primed to be that guy because the offensive line is coming back, and that's big for continuity. So another running back to watch out for this year, Star Thomas. Right, we're down to our last couple of teams now, so let us crack on. And we've got the second of the upstarts from the FCS this year, the Sam Houston Bearcats, established 1912. They play at Bowers Stadium. Their 2022 record was 5-4. That was part of the WAC in the FCS, the Western Athletic Conference. The rivalries with Stephen F. Austin, that is known as the Battle of Piney Woods. You get a 21-pound solid cedar trophy that displays replica pistols on a tombstone on there. So yeah, woe betide the ones who lose that one. The coach, K.C. Keeler, Kurt Charles Keeler, but he is known as KC. He is 63. He is about to start his 10th season with Sam Houston. Very established head coach at this point now. He has 3 Southland Conference championships, a WAC championship, 14 FCS playoff wins, and the national title through 8 seasons with Sam Houston. That was their first national title in program history. And as a Bearcat, he has become the all-time FCS playoff wins leader. No one has more than 14 wins, and he is the only coach to win an FCS title with 2 different schools. He also won it with Delaware, but this is going to be his first year in the FBS. Ryan, you watch a lot down here. You'll be familiar with Keeler. He has turned them into a powerhouse in the FCS.
Yeah, they've gone from big fish, small pond to tiny fish in big pond. They were an FCS powerhouse. Like I say, they were rivaling North Dakota, South Dakota State, Montana likes that. They were rivaling them for the last decade. And they've had so much postseason success, long runs, a few championship games, a title. And they thought it's time to make the jump. And I totally get that. I respect it. They feel like they've done as much as they can at that level. And for sake of money and recruiting, it's time to jump up. So, yeah, they've had some great talent in draft like last few years. Like Wes Hazard was a star receiver last few years ago. He wanted to go to the NFL. Sent a few guys like UDFAs, guys playing Europe, along Canada, NFL. They've produced some really good top talent, and they come with a serious pedigree. Compared to Jacksonville State, I'd say they'd had a lot of like good records, good finishes, but had no real postseason success to talk of. Now we're talking to a team that was trying to win multiple national titles, and is feel like they've got more stable foundations to come up from. So, if anyone is going to do better or make the step up a little bit quicker, I would expect it to be Sam Houston State with such an experienced head coaching staff.
Yeah, so this is a very unique situation coming into this year for them. So I've not done their 2022 stats, so I'll go through those, and there's a good reason for that. So due to their transition from the FCS to the FBS, how it works, they were barred from competing for the WAC championship game and from competing in the FCS playoffs. So it was basically a throwaway season for them, and KC Keeler decided he had no desire to waste a year of eligibility for his players who had gone 11-1 in 2021. He didn't want to waste a year of their eligibility. He wanted them all to have an extra year in the CUSA. So he strategically allocated playing time last year to ensure none of the future core of his team exceeded the number of minutes required to claim a red shirt. So there is a set amount of time you can play in the conference and still get a red shirt. So what he did was he deliberately sat some of his best players so not to use up their eligibility. So his best team wasn't out there. That's why they went 5-4. This team has double-digit wins most seasons for like the last 10 years under him. They went 5-4. Overall, 15 of his players got redshirted who in any other year would have been full starters on his team. Like I say, hence the sketchy record. I mean, what do you make of his decision to do that? Because on one hand, they're going to be ring rusty because they've not played in 2 years, but on the other hand, he's keeping a core of a team he knows can be successful, and he's going to have them for an extra year, providing they all stay and don't go in the portal.
A lot of people didn't like that. A lot of teams didn't like that. A lot of coaches thought that was not really in the best spirit of things, which I understand. It's gamesmanship, but when you've already committed to make the jump, and if you think about it, a lot of these guys might have had 1 year left of eligibility, and then they would have had to go pro or declare for the draft or like supplemental draft. Why waste it? Why not save 1 year of eligibility to have one crack at the FBS? And I don't blame them at all. Like I said, I don't care. Like I say, their fans might have not enjoyed watching football last year, where it gave a lot of the backups. The backups as well, they need depth. So their backups all got playing time that might have all been freshmen and sophomores that can now be ready in the FBS. And the guys that were ready to play FBS football have have now got 1 year to play. So they were rusty, but to get the most talented players they could, knowing that struggling or recruiting might not be easy, they sacrificed the whole season, and I don't blame them at all. I expect them to be much better off for it this season. You do not want to be going into your first season in the FBS knowing your best 5 players have all graduated, have got no eligibility, and you have to replace them. That would not be in a good place to be at all. Those 15 guys, and 7 of them are now playing their last season, like I say, especially for the draft, they're going to literally give everything they've got.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of the preview for this season, the quarterback position is open for business. The returning leader last year was senior Keegan Shoemaker. He threw for 1,122 yards, rushed for an additional 254. However, he only completed 47% of his passes. And so Keel has gone to the transfer portal here. He's brought in Xavier Ward from Washington, who was quite a highly rated recruit once. It has not just happened yet for him. And Ryan, you may know this guy, former Arizona guy, and it's all gone tits up since he left there, and he's been at about 5 different teams now. Gavin Gunnell is now there as well, and it's a shame really, because I was reading the story about him not so long ago, and it's quite sad from his days when he was highly touted. I think he got touted as like the second best quarterback in his class once upon a time. Then he ends up in Arizona. You know, people get fired, he keeps moving around, he doesn't get opportunities. He's kind of the warning story for the transfer portal and stuff like that, I guess, isn't he? Could this be the stop, or is it too late for him now?
Oh, there's been a lot of water under the bridge from him. I remember I think he played in at least one territorial cup. It might even have been the game when ASU won like 70-0. I could be wrong, but he's played in at least one of them, and I'm pretty sure we absolutely terrorised him. And yeah, Arizona had a lot of problem with coaches. Things they struggled, the turnover was really bad, and when they decided to clear house, Gavin, who has got a decent arm, he's talented, high-level recruit. Like I say, he jumped ship too, and I didn't really blame him. And yeah, he's probably used, I imagine, 4 or 5 years of eligibility now, so he's trying to probably have one last swan song. It's not panned out anywhere for him. It could be a match made in heaven. Like I say, he could genuinely come in and have one really good year, and then get his degree or graduate, or if he hadn't already, and just be like, well, I gave him the best shot on last go, and then go get a job somewhere, go be a coach or something. So yeah, he's experienced. He's been around a lot of good players and a lot of good coaches. So even if he only holds a clipboard, it's not the worst place to be for him with the remaining bit of eligibility.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting to see who the quarterback is. As for the rest of the season preview, it is very difficult because they sat so many guys last year. It's hard to see where the team is at. Like I said, a lot of these guys won't have played much football for 2 years, so there is ring rust to knock off, and their first half of season schedule is brutal with a capital B. They are getting chucked straight into a pack of wolves, basically. On offense, they've got to answer the quarterback question. They ranked 87th in the FCS last year. Now, obvious asterisk because some of the main guys were sitting and not playing, but that is still quite poor to be 87th. They've lost their leading rusher and receiver from last season, as well as 2 as the starting O-line. So a lot of questions to be answered. On defense, things look a lot better. They were 37th. They're getting some of the main guys who redshirted back. They're returning over 80% of that production last year, and they have hit the portal hard to try and solve their biggest issue, which is rushing the passer. I believe there's 3 D linemen, good, like quality D linemen coming through the draft. They've lost half their quarterback pressures, which is why they've done that. But outside of that, most of the top tacklers are back. The secondary is well stocked with good players. That could be a sneaky good unit for them this year, the defense, if they can just replenish that D-line. But it is not an easy start, which is why I think they might struggle a bit. The schedule, I've not done home and away. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 home games. So they're split. So get this right. They start away at BYU, at home to Air Force, and away to Houston. Then they're at home to Jacksonville State, But then they're away at Liberty, they're away at New Mexico State. That is a horrid first half of the season. But then you've got Florida International, UTEP and Kennesaw State at home. You've got Louisiana Tech on the road. Then you end with Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. I mean, that's trial by fire. Air Force, we know how good they are. BYU are always difficult. Houston play air raid, which doesn't work against them. And then you're at Liberty and New Mexico State. Liberty could win the conference. New Mexico State, we've said how much better they are. They will be targeting that as a win. Trial by fire.
Yeah, damage limitation. Just try not be 0-4 by the time you get to New Mexico State. I think that's going to be difficult. It's a heavy loaded front schedule. The back end is not so bad. But I expect this team to struggle a lot this year anyway. Like I say, they've made the transition at the right time, but recruiting is never easy, because when JMU transitioned up last year, they already had a star quarterback in Todd Centeio, and he was still fantastic last year at the FBS level. They don't have that. Like I say, they're going to try work out who's going to be the starter, a journeyman, or, like I say, a young kid. So that's not easy, but yeah, the first 3 games, they're probably going to get bullied a bit. They're probably going to get at least a high inning to one of them.
Yeah.
All they want to do is hold their own. All they need to do is show that they can tread water for at least 3/4 of those games, and I think they'll be happy.
Yeah.
Survive those, and then pick away, like say Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, teams I expect them to beat, because they've been beating them for years.
Yeah.
That shouldn't change. And then, like I say, Western Kentucky, LA Tech. First half of the season, it could get really ugly. Second half, they'll look to redeem themselves and finish strong.
Yeah.
But this team has got serious pedigree. The head coach is experienced. This won't be anything new to him. He won't be surprised if they get hammered and they're 0-3. He'll be mad, but he won't be shell-shocked. It'll just be how they dust themselves off.
Yeah.
So we're going to see a lot about that character. I do like them as a team. I think long term they'll succeed, but it's going to be an ugly wake-up call start.
Yeah. Eat at home and then be respectable away from home. I think that's all you can take, that low-hanging fruit at home, and that gives you a start. And then just maintain respectability. I mean, Air Force weren't the best last year. You could beat them at home. You could send out a message early if you can stop the triple threat, so the triple option. But we'll see. To finish them off, the player to watch, the linebacker Kavian Gator, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He is the WAC Defensive Player of the Year, the reigning guy there. He was an award finalist for the Buck Buchanan Award, that's given for the best player in the entirety of the FCS. I think he came very high in the voting. He's all WAC first team, so this is a guy who's come up with serious pedigree. 62 solo tackles, 27 assisted tackles, 12 tackles for loss. He had a sub 10% missed tackle rate, which is good for a guy who's busy all the time. 39 run stops, 3 sacks and an interception. Very productive. One of the big leaders on this defense, which is going to need to be good for Sam Houston to win games this year. He's in his 3rd year with the team. His stats have gotten better year on year, and he's got really good versatility. He doesn't just line up at home at linebacker. He takes snaps on the defensive line. He takes snaps in the slot. And he's even got a few reps at free safety as well. So, little Swiss Army knife there in the middle of their defense. Right, we have 2 teams left. We are nearly there. So, we're going to start off with one of the CUSA's residents, the University of Texas El Paso Miners, UTEP as they are, more traditionally known. Established 1914, play at the Sun Bowl. 2021 record was 7-6. They were 4-4 in the CUSA. 2022 record regressed a little bit, 5-7, 3-5 in the CUSA. So they lost a couple more games, and they lost an extra conference game. Rivalries with New Mexico State. Head coach Dana DeMel, 6th season, been coaching since 1987, did well at Wyoming back in the 90s, had a really bad record at Houston in the early 2000s. Then he had a massive break of 16 years from coaching until he was appointed by UTEP in 2018. He's been a running backs coach, tight ends coach, offensive coordinator, you name it, offensive side of the ball. He's done it. Really bad start with UTEP. First 3 years he went 1-11, 1-11, 3-5. And in that 3 year span he had 1 win in the conference. However, they turned it round. The year before last, they went 7-6. They had 4 conference wins. They went bowling, although I think they lost. And even last year at 5-7, still 3 conference wins. You're kind of starting to build a regularity here. It's a hard place to win, UTEP. It's like Eastern Michigan. You can't just go there and win games, so it's still above the mean for them. But I think they will want to progress this season, Rye, a bit more to show that this progress is sustainable. I mean, you've done all right the last few years. You're getting more wins, but this is where when there's a void at the top, you got to start making your mark now.
Yeah. So instead of getting the next hot thing, they decided when the program was failing, back-to-back 1-win seasons, they went and got a really experienced guy out of retirement. And a lot of people at the time would probably have not agreed with that. Probably thought, oh, why are you going to get this dinosaur? Like I say, this team is struggling. It's failing. Like I say, first 2 seasons, bad. Third season, yeah. And then suddenly, steady the ship. And right now, the ship is steady. Like it says, 7 wins, 5 wins. But now is the time that he's been here, 5 years? It's time now to kick on. Like I say, they've been bad. They're now mediocre. They don't want to be mediocre long. You want to prove that you can be good. You can win 7-8 games now. So this feels like a big year. Like I say, it feels like he's aging. Like I say, he's been around the block a long time. He's probably not going to be in the game much longer. So if he's going to make the jump, and this team is going to make the jump to potential dark horse to make the title game, it's got to start here.
Yeah.
They've got to capitalise on the flux of the conference, and they've got to do it this year.
Yeah.
Before the newbies find their feet, they've got to lay down their marker that we're here, we're one of the OGs. You're not going to come into our turf and suddenly unseat us.
No, exactly. And when you kind of look at the record last year, it tells a story. It wasn't bad. So the wins, it was at home to New Mexico State, at home to Boise State. It's actually a really big win for them. Then they were away at Charlotte, and then they beat both Florida teams, Atlantic and International. The losses, North Texas at home, Oklahoma away, New Mexico away, Louisiana Tech away, at home to Middle Tennessee, then away at Rice and away at UTSA. I mean, you've lost to the guys both teams who were in the CUSA Championship last year. Oklahoma, who were a Big 12 team, which is difficult. And overall, you've lost 5 on the road. You've only lost 2 home games. So, they're beating the teams they should do. And the Boise State was a big win for them. And that's a good sign. The ones they lost, you're not like, should they really have lost that? Maybe New Mexico, but outside of that, you can understand the losses there, can't you?
Yeah. They lost to teams that, 1, are either big on paper, or 2, at the end of the season, were trying to win everything. I mean, Boise State, like I said, to beat them, Boise State made the title game. Like I said, they lost to 2 teams that made the title game in their own conference. So that's good. It's a good strength of record. Like I said, they're not bad teams they're losing to. Yeah. But now beating the teams that there's no excuses or no sour feelings losing to, that's the hard bit. It's all right saying, oh, well, it's all right, we lost to them because they're now good. Now it's like, well, actually, no, we shouldn't be losing to them because we want to prove we can hang with them. Yeah, that's the hardest bit.
Yeah.
Trying to beat the winners, not just accepting, oh, the better team won because they're better than us and end of the season proved it.
Yeah. And his great thing is this team is a lot more balanced than all the others. So the total offense was 70th, the total defense was 40th. So the defense really good. Offense, not bad. Scoring offense, they were 91st. Scoring defense, they were 72nd. Rushing offense, they were 56th. Rushing defense, they were 45th. So again, very balanced. Passing offense was 86th. Passing defense was 50th. Team sacks, they were 53rd in the nation. Sacks allowed, they were 56th. Teams tackled for loss, they were 44th. They got 76 altogether. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 23rd. Only allowed 53 all season. The only metric they did bad in was the turnover margin, where they were 105th. But again, you've got to read the numbers. Gained 16, lost 22. That's not the worst thing in the world in terms of that there. So his team is actually balanced, and actually his strength, which is offense, is the bit that needs to improve. So you would kind of hope that if you mash that down a bit, if you get a CUSA team which are mid of the pack for offense and defense, that can win you a title.
Yeah, there are no glaring issues on this team. It just needs tweaks. You don't need a major overhaul. Like I say, there's nothing that's alarming or glaring. Like I say, that's the best position to be in. It's just a bit of recruitment, a bit of portal help, a little bit of a spark, and if you're consistent in what you were good in last year, that's the recipe for success.
Exactly. And looking at next season, so the quarterback, he's one of the most established in the league, Gavin Hardison. Nothing to sniff at. He is maybe underappreciated, really. It's his 5th year, 6'3", 205 pounds. He has over 7,000 passing yards, all for the minors. He had a breakout 2021. It was a really good season. Was expected to push on last year, but did have a couple of niggling injury issues, meant he missed a couple of games, and he did regress a little bit. He went from 55% completion down to just 52, and this is year 4. He threw 11 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, and he's fumbled the ball 24 times in the last 2 years. So ball security is an issue for him. But that said, he's not had the best support. He had 13% of his catchable passes in 2022 were dropped. I think that was the second worst in the division. So he's throwing a lot of good passes. His receivers just are not catching them. He needs more consistency, and this would be a good year for it to emerge. But he's one of the most established guys. If he can get it going well, this UTIP offense could be good. In terms of the season itself, they are going to undergo change. They're only bringing back 50% of the production from last year. They're set at quarterback, which is a help. He just needs to control the turnovers. Obviously, 19 of them in last year. The running back room has lost 3 of its top 4 rushers, but Deion Hankins, the guy who's left, he is a stud. He had 700 yards last year. He's a potential star in the making. Tyron Smith, the wide receiver, left, committed to Texas A&M, then decided he wanted to come back, so he is a legitimate weapon for Hardison to throw at. The offensive line is returning 4 all-star players. That is literally 4 all-stars. So they rank for a CUSA team really high. The offensive line is a big strength of this team, and when you've got the quarterback and when you've got the weapons for him, something good could happen. The defense was the stronger unit last year. It has suffered losses. The top 2 sack and tackle for loss leaders are gone. 5 of the top 7 tacklers are gone. There's been a lot of portal and JUCO transfers in to see if they can step up and fill the voids, but the secondary wasn't great. Just 5 interceptions on the season, so maybe that can get better and sort of even out the losses there. They've got playmakers like the edge Praise Amawale. I think we highlighted him last year as well. He's in year 6, so I mean the ingredients are there, Ryan. If the defense can stay the same, and 4 all-stars on an offensive line for a conference is rare, that should give you all the platform you need to really go and start beating up on teams this year.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is this team will only be as good or as bad as Hardison. Like I say, 1, he's got to play all the games. 2, he needs to have a 2021 kind of season. Like I say, because last year he didn't throw many interceptions, but he didn't throw anywhere near as enough touchdowns as he should be. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the division, purely off of experience. And I imagine this is his 5th year. This must be his final year of eligibility. He's either a senior or a super senior. He's got to go out on top. If this is going to be his last year, he's going to have to make it his best. Like I say, so everything else is around him. He's pretty much set. So yeah, he will determine how successful this year is, and depending on how well he does. And if like I say, stop turning. The first thing is he cannot give the ball away. The fumbles, that has to stop, and immediately.
Yeah, and the schedule's a very intriguing one. This could be the right setup for them. So you start with 3 road games out your first 4. You're away at Jacksonville State, you're at home to Incarnate Ward, you're away at Northwestern, you're away at Arizona, then you're at home to UNLV and Louisiana Tech, you're on the road to Florida International, at home to New Mexico State, away to Sam Houston, you're at home to Western Kentucky, then away at Middle Tennessee, then at home to Liberty. I mean, it sounds tough, but Jacksonville State just up. Incarnate Word, they're good, but they're FCS, and they've just lost their great asset at quarterback. and they've got a scrub there this year. Northwestern and Arizona, I know we like Arizona, but they are low-hanging fruit who can lose games like that. Then you've got UNLV, who had a great year last year, but traditionally bad. And then the schedule, so you've got your hardest USA teams at home, and you've got the weaker ones away. So that sort of sets out perfect in terms of maximising your opportunity to win. Again, dark horses here. If you can nick a win off Northwestern or Arizona, you're right in this.
Yeah, there's a few potential upsets there. Like you say, Northwestern. Hull, their running back, he's gone. Who will be quarterback? I don't know if Heinzke's there anymore. Like, huge turnover. Arizona, like I say, got good last year. Were the better team in state. Good quarterback. Good receivers. That'll be a real test. That could be quite fun to watch. Like I say, UNLV, like, you don't really know what you're going to get with them. Like, they might be able to keep pace with them. So there's some chances there to pick up a potential big upset or two.
Yeah.
And then go to work in conference.
Yeah.
Like I say, so yeah. If all goes well and the quarterback has a productive year, keeps turnovers to a minimum, dark horse, you can consider them a dark horse to make the title game. 8 wins is not out of the question at all.
No, I fully agree with you there. I expect them to make waves. If you can come out of those first 4 with 2 wins, bearing in mind you've been on the road 3 times, I think you set yourself up very well for this schedule. So the player to watch, I've actually cheated here. It's not one. The offensive line is the unit to watch here. So like I said, 4 All-Stars. So you've got the left tackle, Stephen Hubbard, the left guard, Justin Myers, the centre, Andrew Mayer, and the right guard, Elijah Klein. They are a top 50 run blocking unit in the entire country, and I think they ranked somewhere in the 70s in pass pro. Now this schedule, like I said, it sets up some low-hanging fruit. If you as an offensive line can go dominate Northwestern, can go dominate Arizona, and really put on a show, some of these guys could get drafted high. I think, and they're young as well. They're not even like vets yet. A lot of them are like for second, third year guys. So watch the offensive line for UTEP. It is stacked. Right, last team. We've been going a while. We are finally there to number 9. The Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, always a fun team to talk about. Established 1908. They play at the Houchins Industries LT Smith Stadium. 2021 record. That famous one they had 9-5. They were 7-1 in the CUSA. They were Eastern Conference champions back when they had conferences. They don't anymore. The 2022 record, they went 9-5 again, but they went 6-2 in the CUSA. They lost an extra conference game, which ultimately was their undoing. They finished 3rd on head-to-head with North Texas because North Texas absolutely battered them, for want of a better word. The rivalries: Middle Tennessee, East Kentucky, and Murray State. 2 of those are inactive right now. Coach Tyson Helton, 5th season, mastermind behind one of the most explosive offenses ever seen in the CUSA or college football, which culminated in that Bailey Zappi season where he blitzed Joe Burrow's record for passing yards in a season. They were 2nd in the country, only to Ohio State and CJ Stroud, with 7,494 yards of total offense and 76 touchdowns. They averaged 535 yards of offense per game. He's 32-21 over his first 4 years. He's led Western Kentucky to a bowl game every season. He's won 3 of 4 of those bowl games in charge. There was meant to be obvious regression in this team last year, huge because they lost so much with Zappe, but it was a lot more minor than they thought. I think a lot of people thought the bottom might fall out. It didn't. Like I said, they finished 3rd in the new single division format, just missed out on the conference game. Helton has done a really good job with his team. Offense is always really fun to watch, and it just did not drop off last year. And they will be the ones really looking to take the vacant throne in the CUSA.
Oh yeah, all the pressure. There's lots of pressure now. UTSA and North Texas are gone. Western Kentucky, I think, will be expected to dominate. They will expected to walk this conference. They're the big dog. They are now if you go off the last 3-4 years, they're the big dog. and they will not take kindly to anyone trying to stand in their way, which means they're going to have to play like it. They're going to have to play like the team that to beat. Everyone, Western Kentucky is your cup final. When you play Western Kentucky, that's your championship game, trying to beat them. And with that comes a lot of pressure. Let's say when you're the team that's expected to take home the spoils. So what that means is that there's chances for potential upsets here. So it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with this pressure of now being the favourite. Without looking at the bookies odds, they have to be the favourite to win the CUSA. There's no two ways to see about it. Recent success, an explosive brand of football. So, yeah, this is a big year. If they struggle, then that's going to look really bad.
Well, and there is a worrying trend for them from last year. I'll quickly go through it in a minute, but just want to shout out Brent first. He just want to say thanks for answering my questions, Antony. So one in the mailbag chat yesterday told me I should do my research before asking. Apparently her is a Nate Sudfield fan. Brent, I love answering questions for you. You know your stuff, and if you don't, you ask. You can ask as many questions as you want. I will always answer them on this. You know that, and we really appreciate the support you give this show. You've been with us since day one, so really appreciate it. So, as in terms of last year, so the wins: Austin Peay away at Hawaii, at home to Florida International, away at Middle Tennessee, versus UAB, at Charlotte, versus Rice, at Florida Atlantic, versus South Alabama in the bowl game. But do get this right. They lost away to Indiana, at home to Troy, away at UTSA, at home to North Texas, and away at Auburn. Now, what do all those teams have in common? Indiana and Auburn, obviously, Power 5 schools away on the road, but Troy, Sunbelt champions, North Texas, CUSA runners-up, UTSA, CUSA winners second time in a row. All those defeats came against good teams who nullified their passing attack. And that's the problem with air raid. When you come up against a team with established talent, you're going to struggle if you don't have a plan B. And that I would be worried if that was me.
Yeah, I've seen Western Kentucky fall last few years because of stylistic matchups. When they play style or against someone that they don't like, they don't have a plan B. If they play against someone that can confuse them with coverage, or that can play 5 or 6 DBs and go man to man against their receivers and give that, it's game over. Look at how, when we had a UTSA in the title game and it was a high scoring affair, but there was turnovers. Western Kentucky turned the ball over a few times because UTSA took it away from them. And then their defense, as I've said before, Western Kentucky, their defense is susceptible. It can be fragile because they're such a heavy loaded offense. So it's hard. It's like they play a dangerous game and it's been nullified a few times. And when you've got no plan B, when you've got no real run game to fall back on, a passing offense, it can be painful to watch.
And you can see it in the stats from last year as well. The total offense was 7th in the nation, 497 yards. So even without Bailey Zappi, the 550-yard offense still had 500 yards per game. But the total defense, 73rd, gave up 390 yards per game. Scoring offense, 15th. Scoring defense, 44th. Actually, they didn't give up that many points considering the defense was meh. But then you come to the rushing offense and the passing offense breakups. Rushing offense, they were 70th. 145 yards per game, 4.9 yards per carry. Not too bad. But the passing offense, second in the nation, 352 yards per game, 43 touchdowns. That's 200 more yards per game than rushing, which is where the problem comes when you're so out of balance with things. And when one aspect that doesn't work, you can't fall back on the second part of it. The rushing defense was 61st. The passing defense was 85th. So actually, not bad. Team sacks, they were 54th. Team tackles for loss, they were 97th. So nothing great in terms of that. But sacks allowed, they were 10th. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 5th. So then that's significant. They only gave up 14 sacks, and they only gave up 51 tackles for loss, and that's significant because they throw the ball all the time, so you expect the sack count to be higher on these air raids, but the offensive line was actually really damn good, which is why it flourished so much. It's just, you've just got to get the run game involved more. In the turnover margin, they were 17th in the country. They gained 32. They lost 22. So again, it was a case of they had a lot thrown at them, and they were able to sort of stat pad almost a little bit. A lot of takeaways. But again, that's just, those stats are just indicative of that team, aren't they? Really, pass well, run not so well, defense okay, but they just load up on stats because again, they're not that great.
No, they look to score quickly and heavily because with no run game, they can't manage clock. Yeah. I've seen this team fail to manage the clock and leave 4 or 5 minutes for a comeback too often because they score too quick. You can score too quickly in football. People don't understand that. You leave too much time on the clock because they can't run. They can't chew clock up.
Yeah.
They can't get a few yards on first down and then work it. They've got to bomb it 40 yards downfield and score, and then they'll concede straight away. They've got to do it again.
Defense is gassed.
Yeah, and when the defense, like I say, then steps up and they're playing man coverage and the receivers aren't getting free, and even though their offensive line is so good in pass pro and the QB gets the ball so quickly, in run blocking, it's not asked to do it often enough, so it's not good enough in that sense, and they just can't make calls for running backs, or they don't play a varied enough running scheme.
No.
That's just where they fall down. And there'll be a lot of teams this year that I guarantee will hold them to under 200 yards passing, few interceptions. A run game will be asked to win them the game.
Yeah, no, exactly. You've got to change that. So, season preview for this year. Quarterback is Austin Reed, 6'2", 230 pounds. The most prolific passer in the nation last year with 4,746 passing yards. Just a shade more than Penix Jr. managed at Washington. 40 touchdown throws, 11 picks, 313 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground, but he fumbled it 8 times as well. It is as though Bailey Zapp never existed for Western Kentucky. They just went about the business. One of the most devastating air attacks in college football for the second year running. Another with a turnover problem, like Hardison, 19 turnovers in the year. That has to change. But he was an FCS transfer in his first year. He played at West Florida beforehand, so that's a pretty damn good year. To come from the FCS and be the passing yard leader in the entirety of the FBS in year one, that's great. He's very patient in the pocket. He can hit all areas of the field with his arm. He has mechanic issues and read progression issues to work out on, but again, that's sort of nitpicking after 1 year in the FBS. If you see an improvement this year, he could go over 5,000 yards. And now that UTSA are gone, the king is gone. The throne is there to be had, and there are a lot of easy pickings for this Hilltoppers team if they wish. The offense is just going to be potent. Helton deploys air raid. It's good. It looks great. It gets points. The cute quarterback's back. Top receiving threat is back. They lose 2 members of the offensive line, but it's only 2 of them, so you'd like to think they could fix that. I mean, they only returned 42% of the Bailey Zapp offense last year. You wouldn't have known that. They just clicked straight away and were one of the best offenses in football. Got to get the run game going more, though. All the defeats last year, like I said, came against Power 5 opponents, G5 conference champions or championship game teams. Teams who can nullify their strengths beat them. So you've got to be better. The red zone offense was bad as well. They were 94th in the country, so that needs to improve as well. Defensively, they were serviceable, but they're 128th in return in production this year. Less than 40% of that team is coming back. And they were giving up, in the losses, 36 points per game in the losses. So they were serviceable against decent teams. They plummeted against good ones. And over the last 2 years, they're 2-7 in one-score games. So making critical stops, also a big issue for them. Their saving grace, though, is the schedule gods have worked in their favour. So the improvement does need to be significant, but not New Mexico State-esque on defence to get them in the championship. The schedule, like I say, this is really easy after week 4. So you start at home to South Florida and Houston Christian. Then you've got road trips to Ohio State and Troy. So that's your Sun Belt champions at Ohio State. Don't need to say how hard that is. Middle Tennessee at home, Louisiana Tech away, Jacksonville State away, Liberty, the big rivals for the conference, at home, away at UTEP. Then you've got New Mexico State and Sam Houston at home, and Florida International away. I mean, outside of weeks 3 and 4, you can run that schedule again if you do well, but the team finally balanced act this year in terms of how it's put together.
Yeah, those out-of-conference games shouldn't matter. As long as they handle business inside the conference, they'll walk into the final. But as you say, the red zone offense is bad because once you get inside the 10-yard line, passing the ball is really hard.
Yeah.
But they've got nowhere to punch it in, have they? They can't punch it in at the goal line. Passing the ball is notoriously hard. So that is the main thing. They've got to fix inside the red zone. They've got to get better running the ball. Otherwise, they will get to 3rd and 4th down and they'll have to set up for field goals. And it's funny because it sounds like the LA Chargers. How bad are they in one-score games? Terrible. Because of poor clock management and not being a run team that can run the ball consistently as much as they pass it. That's the same struggles they have. So yeah, the first few games shouldn't have much impact as long as they don't get any injuries on the season. And as soon as they get to the in-schedule conference, they kind of want to be running the table, yeah. If they don't make the title game, the season is a disaster.
Yeah, I think that Troy Trojans game, week 4, is big because they got smacked by them last year.
So hard, like I say. They just take everything away from you.
Yeah, and they didn't, we'll do the Sun Belt next week, but that's the team you've got to beat. That's the level you need to be at, and you're away at them. So that'll be the big test for them early on. And South Florida, no pushovers. Brent says, cannon arm or system? Well, for the quarterback, it is system-based there, but he also did the same at West Florida in the FCS, so he has history of, producing very well. So I'm inclined to believe it's a bit of both. If he fixes his mechanics this year, he could be a legitimate draft prospect. And he's still got a couple of years to go, I believe, before he declares. So a bit of both in terms of that one. And ending it all off, the last player to watch, maybe one of the most exciting guys in the CUSA this year. That is their wide receiver, Malachi Corley. He was the top receiving threat I mentioned about. He is 5'11" and 200 pounds. He built off a very promising season with Bailey Zappi in 2021. I think he had about 700 yards. He became one of Reed's main guys in 2022. Now get this, he had 11 touchdowns on the year. He had 1,282 receiving yards, which is pretty good. That's 5th amongst all receivers in the nation. 975 of those yards were yak. That was the most in the nation by 300 yards. No one else got above 700 yards of yak in college football last year. He got 1,000. It is the most yak recorded in a season in the PFF college era. So this guy is a yak machine. He also forced 40, that's 40, missed tackles. That was 13 more than any other receiver in college football, the second place, and again, a PFF era record. He is a potential unicorn when it comes to the type of receiver that he is. You will hear his name more and more. His draft is 2025, but if he has another 1,000+ yard season here, the way he is, he's going to be getting an offer from big Power 5 schools this time in 12 months. So Malachi Corley, name to watch out for, the wide receiver for Western Kentucky. Honestly, the kid could be incredibly special. I'm looking forward to watching him this year. And that is it. The 9 teams that are going to be competing for the CUSA this year. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about them, what they're about, how they're looking going into the season. Now, I said this year, as part of what we're doing with the College Football Pod, me and Ryan are going to do a special predictions show just before the season. We're going to predict the championship games, which teams are going to win it, which teams are going to be in it, etc. But Ryan, going through all these teams, They're juicing them down. Like I said, this is a conference that is ripe for taking. Who really deep down are you sort of fancying to be in and around winning it this year? Because you've got dark horses, established prospects, and, you know, underdogs who could win the whole damn thing.
Well, Western Kentucky are probably the early season favourites, but I think Middle Tennessee, they'll class themselves as a dark horse. They know the conference really well. They know how to win in conference. I don't know, like UTEP. I don't know. I don't know what will happen with them. Like, they could be, or it could all fall flat on the face. So they're a wild card team. I don't really trust any of the teams that are coming in or coming up just yet. I think it's a bit too soon for them. But New Mexico State, maybe. Like I say, maybe the fairy tale. Maybe it's they've turned a corner, and now they'll be boosted with confidence. Who's left conference?
I think there are 6 legitimate options to win the conference this year. I think it's incredibly tough. But you look at those guys, your UTEPs, your Middle Tennessees, your Louisiana Tech. With Bachmeier been at Louisiana Tech and how they score points, they are my dark horse to win the conference. And I predicted UTSA to double up last year, so I got the winner last year. We'll do these officially before the season starts, but I don't know. I fancy. I can't say Liberty because they've been good, and I don't know anything about any of the quarterbacks. Like I said, Jamie hadn't brought anyone with him, which was the weirdest thing I thought. I thought he'd go to the portal and try to fish out a good, solid, reasonable starting quarterback. See, this is where I'm at. I'm looking at teams who have a solid quarterback situation. Salter and Bennett are still fighting it out at Liberty, and neither of them played a full season last year. So if you listen to any other college pods, they will just talk about Liberty and Western Kentucky running the conference this year. That is not true. UTEP, Louisiana Tech, Middle Tennessee, there is a strong field in the middle this year who do have established quarterbacks. So Louisiana Tech are my dark horses. Maybe they could win it, but Liberty can. Liberty have got the schedule, so I might go with them for now as the easy pick, but one of those 3 in the middle I think are going to shock everybody. We have a new subscriber here, that is Steve Cole RC. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Hopefully you've enjoyed what we've been doing this evening. This has been the CUSA preview. This is the first of 11 we'll be doing for all the conferences. We appreciate everyone hanging around with us. This has gone a while, but we do a little more for the G5 because the teams are a little unheard of and they deserve a bit more love. You know, when it comes to the Power 5, people know a lot more about those, so we like to be a bit more in depth here. Lisa De Lorenzo goes, I am of the opinion that when a QB wins, that is all that matters. Both coordinators' job is to develop a system that works well for their players and put them in a position to win. Yeah, that's true, and that's what I'm going on this year. I'm trying to find the most stable franchise this year with the best quarterback. I think that might be Louisiana Tech. I do with Bachmeier, so that's why I will back those. Right, before we clock off, right, we did have one question from Brent right at the very beginning. Probably when we talk about the Pac-12, we'll talk about this more, but it's the question that's getting asked all the time. How long is it going to take Dion to sort the mess that he's making at Colorado?
I reckon they'll be competitive straight away. I reckon off the field it'll be a circus clown show, but I'm a Shedeur Sanders guy. I think the kid's an absolute student. And the Pac-12 also, when you take away like 3 or 4 teams, it's dog shit. It's the perfect storm for the Buffaloes to straight away win 8, 9, 10 games. So yeah, I reckon on the field they will quickly be competitive. But I reckon it unravels within at least 2-3 years. I reckon he's gone. And I reckon half the players have had a mass exodus too when they're falling out with him. So I give him a 2-year window to win the Pac-12 where it all falls to shit.
Oh, I thought we were going to have our first little disagreement of this season, but no, I agree. I think it's going to go down in a few years. I don't think it's going to go well this year. I think the Pac's one of the strongest Power 5 conferences this year in terms of competition. You got Washington, Oregon, Utah, UCLA, the really good teams, and they are starting from a position of nothingness. You've got to come in and beat teams who've been playing. Even the bottom feeders like Arizona are getting better. It's going to be hard to beat Arizona. So I just don't see them making it this year, and I think the off-field stuff is going to curtail him before he can get it going. So neither of us particularly positive on that one there, Brent. Tim Hutchinson's in the chat. He says, what up, Doughboys? What up, Dough to you? Thank you for joining us. If anyone has anything they want to ask us quickly before we go, please do. I will just go through the close down stuff before we do. Can Ryan do a Cockney accent? I don't believe that he can. I don't think either of us can. You can't... The thing is, Grandizer, you can't replicate a Cockney accent. You have to be a Cockney to do. You can replicate Scouse and Geordie and stuff like that, but you just can't replicate a Cockney accent. We'll get the other Ryan on the show at some point. He's about as Cockney as you can get, but we can't do it. It just can't be done. So in terms of other little bits and bobs, where were we? So next shows. The main Roar of the Lions podcast, the Detroit Lions one, will be back on Monday. Episode to be decided. Me and Matt are having a meeting tomorrow, sorting the schedule out. The college football podcast will be back this time next week. We will probably follow suit from last year and do the Sun Belt. That's also going to be an interesting conference again this year. And then we'll keep doing these week by week. So we'll be back in a week. We'll be doing this regularly from now on. So that is everything in terms of the new ones there. Anything else we have? Brent says, how many wins for the Buffs this year?
7.5. I'll say somewhere around there.
Ooh, right. I'm going to go... I don't know what the schedule is, so I'll say 4.5. Ryan's going 7.5. I'm taking the under on 4.5. Ryan's going at 7.5, so there we go. Right, you can find us all over the internet, on YouTube. You can find us at Roar of the Lions UK, Twitch, ROTL_UK, Facebook page, Roar of the Lions UK, the group, Detroit Lions Fans UK, One Pride Worldwide, on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us at ROTL UK, and on the website, you can find us www.roarofthelionsuk.com. Again, thank you to everyone this evening. I know Big Aries has been on Twitch, so appreciate it. Appreciate you, Grandizer. Really appreciate you, Brent, Lisa, Tim, everyone who's in. Thank you for supporting us on the show. This is the premiere of the College Football Podcast Season 3. Hopefully you will stick with us throughout the season. It is going to be real good fun. Brent goes, I'm thinking 5 wins for the year. So Brent's with me on that. Me and Brent are best buds on this one. We won't be on every opinion, but we are for this. Lisa goes 7, but Prime is a very good coach. So Lisa's with you, Ryan, and Brent's with me. So we're forming little teams here. You're with Lisa, I'm with Brent. We think less, you think more. So it's going to be interesting. But we'll do our Pac-12 preview soon, and we'll talk all about Dion and that. So just remains for me, though, to thank Ryan, to thank Hank. Anything else you want to get off your chest before we go, Ryan?
No, it's just good to be back.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, I've missed this. I've missed all doing this, and hopefully you've enjoyed what we've done this evening. Hopefully you know a little bit more about the CUSA now, and as I say, Sun Belt next week. Have a wonderful week. I will see some of you later on streams this week. I might be with Mike tomorrow, so we'll see you then. Just remains for me to thank Ryan and Hank, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.